Chapter 332. Sulen casually picked up a statue. He didn't know what it was made of, but it looked like jade. Although it looked ordinary, it contained a trace of evil energy. He put more force into his palm, and the statue couldn't take it anymore. It cracked, and the evil energy inside spread out. A lightning flashed, and the evil energy was instantly dispelled. Then, Sulen destroyed all the items in front of him that contained evil energy. Without these things, the evil god would have to spend a lot of effort to quietly develop his followers. Sulen was more than happy to create some trouble for him. After dealing with these things, Sulen asked his men to bring the trophies and the bodies of his comrades back to Northern Town. This time, they killed a barbarian berserker and some others were injured. The injured ones could be healed with physical healing, but the dead ones had to be cremated. Because they were killed by the evil god's incarnation, there was a lot of negative energy on their bodies. If it wasn't removed, the bodies would be resurrected as undead creatures. The best way was to animate them. Of course, they could also find a priest to purify them. However, the evil energy was not ordinary. Only a bishop could purify it. The loot from the evil god's church was about 30,000 gold coins, some gold and silver equipment, and some weapons and armors. At the same time, they also rescued a dozen or so refugees. According to Wen, these refugees came to Northern Citadel with a caravan, but they were intercepted by the evil cultists halfway. It turned out that the caravan was actually the evil cultists in disguise. They killed people in Northern Town because they didn't have enough sacrifices. Northern Town was recruiting refugees, and many caravans did the same. The competition was fierce, but the number of evil god's followers was too small. The evil god's sacrifice couldn't be delayed, so they had to start with Northern Town. However, they didn't expect Northern Town to act so quickly. Before the blood sacrifice was completed, Sulen and his men came knocking on their door. They pushed all the way and even broke the crystal. Sulen took the team back to the Northern Town. In the following time, he took the Big Dipper elixir and 9 bulls and 2 tigers pills. His constitution increased from 38 to 44, and his agility increased from 32 to 37. The 5 points of divinity also brought some changes to him. The first was the addition of the divine bloodline talent in his attribute pain. Divine bloodline. With the divine bloodline, you have gradually broken away from the boundaries of mortals and approached the direction of gods. Your lifespan has begun to become longer, your aging speed has slowed down, your potential has increased, you have obtained some divine abilities, your natural armor +1, your resistance to various abnormal statuses +1, and when performing various tests, you have a higher chance of passing the tests. Acquired ability, language proficiency. Language proficiency. The power of divinity allows you to communicate with most intelligent beings. Sulen was a little surprised by the effect of the divine power. He wanted to know what would happen when the divinity reached the demigod level. After spending a few days familiarizing himself with the increased attributes of his body, Sulen continued to deal with the affairs of the territory. In order to prevent the appearance of evil god followers in the territory or the establishment of evil god followers' strongholds, Sulen stipulated that all outsiders must register at the city hall and apply for a temporary residence permit. After having a temporary residence permit, they were allowed to live in the city. Even if they went to stay in hotels, they would need to show a temporary residence permit. Without a temporary residence permit, all hotels, warehouses, and rental houses would not be allowed to live. If someone violated the rules, they would be detained immediately, their residence qualifications would be revoked, and a high fine would be imposed. Although it would be very troublesome to do so, it would also greatly reduce the chances of evil god followers sneaking in. In fact, Sulen wanted to find a few paladins to cast detect evil on those people, but after thinking about it, he cancelled the idea. Paladins were very annoying professions. These people were very paranoid about justice. If they were to cast detect evil, more than 70% of the nobles in the world would be glowing red. Some people once asked the paladins for help. After the paladins cast detect evil, more than 30% of the people in the city were glowing red. The whole city was almost overturned by them. The paladins all wore the same silver-white knight's armor and were equipped with a knight's long sword. They had a friendly smile on their faces, which made it easy for people to have a good impression of them. Generally speaking, paladins were a group of very charming existences. Using the standards of the previous world, they were perfect idealists. They were tolerant of the good camp and cold to the evil camp. If it was in other cities, it would be fine, but in a developed city, it was a trap. The merchants in this era were not good people, especially those who dared to do business in the northern wasteland. The northern wasteland was a place outside the law. If they met other caravans in the wild, they would be alert immediately. If they found that the other caravans were weak, they wouldn't mind taking on the role of bandits. Most of the merchants relied on the nobles. Most of the time, they would do some illegal things. It was good enough for most of the merchants to be neutral. Most of them were already leaning towards the evil camp. There were only a few merchants who were truly good. If these merchants did not have a strong background and strength, they would have been divided up by other merchants. In short, it was really difficult for good people to do business in this world. It could be said that at least 1/3 of the merchants were leaning towards the evil camp. It was just that the degree of leaning was not high. Even those merchants who were neutral had a lot of blood on their hands. If he used detect evil at this time, he would most likely be glowing red. If he was seen by the paladins, there was a high chance that he would be killed. The paladins were indeed very kind. They were not hypocritical like the nobles. They could not tolerate evil in their eyes. They were also the guardians of justice. They were pious, strong, brave, fearless, compassionate, humble, loyal, protecting women and children, upholding justice. Almost all the knight's virtues could be applied to them. If the paladins used detect evil on Sulen, the red light on Sullen's body would probably be no less than that of those murderous executioners. He had enslaved at least tens of thousands of people, which was also considered evil in the eyes of the paladins. Although it was because of him that those refugees could survive and had hope for the future, it still did not change the fact that Sulen was enslaving and oppressing the weak. The paladins were a group of very special people. They firmly believed in order and kindness. They had a strong will and belief. It was not an exaggeration to say that the difficulty of becoming a paladin was 1 in 10,000. It was not a matter of talent, but whether your heart believed in justice and kindness. If the paladins doubted faith, belief, and justice, then the power of the paladins would decline rapidly. They might become an ordinary warrior, or they might fall and become a dark warrior. Although paladins were not popular among the nobles, they were the most popular among the lower-class people. It was precisely because of the existence of this group of people like paladins that the civilians of this world had a much better life. The paladins' first belief was justice, and their second belief was God. In their hearts, justice was above everything. Because of their special profession, the paladins were naturally immune to fear, disease, and could perform healing magic. They also had high magic resistance. It was a very powerful profession, but because of various reasons, the number of paladins had always been small. Sulen did not want to see any paladins come to Northern Town. Although he did not like the paladins, he had to admit that the world could not do without them. In order to cooperate with the temporary residence permit, Sulen also announced the implementation of the household registration system in Northern Town. Many of the original residents of Northern Town were divided into areas and counted. After all, they worked together in groups. It was not difficult to add the household registration system now. It did not take long for the grassroots officials to finish counting. The system also reflected the birth of the household registration system. The stability of Northern Town directly increased by 13 points. After the household registration system was established, Sulen went to the Weapons Bureau in Northern Town. Under Sullen's command, the Weapons Bureau had been studying crossbows. After a period of research, there were some results. For example, the range of the crossbow had increased, and its power had increased, but its weight had increased, and its structure had become more complicated. The more complicated something was, the more likely it was to have problems on the battlefield. The ideal crossbow had to be simple in structure, fast in loading, long range, high in power, high in accuracy, and light in weight. However, this was only a dream. After Sulen came here, he checked the latest crossbow. He was still not satisfied. The structure of the crossbow was too complicated, and the failure rate was very high. He found the Book of Luban and chose to use it on the crossbow. Ding! Are you sure you want to use the Book of Luban on the crossbow? Yes. With a flash of light, the Book of Luban in the storage space disappeared. At the same time, in the system interface, the Weapon Bureau's logo showed an accelerated research symbol. The craftsman seemed to have new ideas and began to experiment. With this buff, the research progress increased by several times. Soon, a new crossbow was completed. Sulen brought people to the training ground for training. A group of soldiers held the crossbow and began to shoot at the targets in the shooting range. After some testing, Sulen was satisfied with the crossbow. After the improvement, the range of the crossbow had increased to 120 meters. 100 meters could penetrate inlaid iron armor, 80 meters could penetrate ordinary iron armor, and 50 meters could penetrate full-body armor. This was very powerful. Of course, the shooting speed of the crossbow did not increase. In order to be effective, the crossbow formation was still needed. The structure was simpler, the failure rate was lower, and the reliability was improved. Sulen had decided to equip the army with this crossbow. Chapter 333. Armor-piercing crossbow, a crossbow made of hardwood, steel, beast tendons, and other raw materials. It has a decent range and armor-piercing ability. Requires a set of armor-piercing arrows. Attack speed, slow, weight, heavy, armor-piercing +1, range +1. Sulen looked at the heavy crossbow and nodded in satisfaction. Although it still had many flaws, it could be used in a real battle. Sulen put down the crossbow and asked, "How much does it cost to make this crossbow?" A craftsman with calloused hands hurriedly took the crossbow and said, "My lord, including the cost of labor and materials, the cost of making this crossbow is around 30 gold coins. If we can mass produce it, the price will be slightly lower." A crossbow was not as simple as a crossbow. It would cost a lot of money to maintain it. A crossbow would cost more than a bow. Make 3,000 crossbows first. Sulen decided after some thought. 3,000 crossbows would cost 90,000 kinner per crossbow. If they were to include the arrows needed for maintenance, the crossbows would cost at least 100,000 kinner per crossbow. "Yes, my lord. I'll get the workers to prepare it. During production, follow this method of production." Sulen took out a piece of paper and said. On the paper was the assembly line method. Not only was it fast, but it was also not easy to leak the information. It also lowered the difficulty of production. The crossbowmen's training had started a long time ago. The crossbowmen of Northern Garrison City were only equipped with iron-plated armor and a longsword. They did not have shields or other protective equipment. They were not expected to rely on long swords during their training. They were only equipped with long swords just in case. The crossbowmen were led by a human general Sulen had just discovered, Cecil. Their main training was formations and crossbow operation. Cecil was not a hero. At most, he was an elite leader. However, he still had a chance to become a hero. Northern Garrison City's army had already exceeded 10,000 people. The ratio of the population to the army had reached a shocking ratio of 10 to 1. It was a relatively rare ratio on the continent. Fortunately, Northern Garrison City was rich enough to support them. With the harvest altar, Northern Garrison City would not run out of food. The Northern Wilderness. The Lotus Mountain Range was like an enormous dragon crawling across the wasteland to the north. It started in the southwest and extended to the northeast. It was around 800 li long. The mountain range was able to block the cold wind from the ice fields, which was why the wastelands in Northern Garrison City were not too cold during winter. In the vast area south of the Sierra de Lotus, many tribes lived here. Northern Garrison City occupied an area in the southwest of the Sierra de Lotus. At this time, in a wasteland far away from here, the weather was very cold. Snowflakes were floating in the air, and messy tents could be seen everywhere. Smoke rose from the tents. This was a tribe of orcs, but what was strange was that other than orcs, there were also some gnolls and trolls. These gnolls and trolls didn't exist as slaves. It looked more like they were working together on an equal footing. Bang! A loud sound came from the tent, followed by the roars of the orcs. That land must belong Stormwind. The Bloodblade Jackalans won't give up the loot they deserve. That is the promised land given to us by our Lord Yeenagu. Come on, the promised land is bullshit. If you want to take it, just say it. Don't make so many excuses. A tall troll sneered. How dare you blaspheme our Lord? I will kill you and sacrifice you to our Lord. The gnoll roared. Come on, see if I don't smash your head. The scene in the tent was very heated. It seemed that a fight would break out in the next second. The gnolls, and the trolls stared at each other fiercely. They did not give in at all, but they tried their best to restrain themselves. All right, let's calm down. What is the purpose of our gathering here? I think everyone knows. An old gnoll shaman in the corner said. If Sulen saw him again, he would definitely recognize that this gnoll shaman was the great shaman of the gnoll tribe that he defeated. After the defeat of the gnolls, Sulen killed the gnoll chieftain, but the gnoll shaman disappeared. One had to know that the gnolls had chased after the gnolls, but the gnoll shaman still escaped unscathed. The old gnoll's skin was dry like tree bark. If humans gain a foothold in the wilderness, they will slowly expand according to their inertia. If we can't pull out that nail as soon as possible, it won't be long before there is no room for us to live in the northern wilderness. I'm not exaggerating. Cough, cough. The old gnoll coughed violently. His thin and withered body gave people a feeling that it would break at any time. Hearing the old shaman's words, the gnolls and trolls did not refute. Back then, the Fireblade tribe was not weaker than them at all. However, after a decisive battle, the Fireblade tribe disappeared. Only the old shaman and the remaining gnolls joined the Stormwind tribe. And the trolls, along with their ancestral spirits, were killed by him. Now, we haven't even defeated those humans, and you want to divide the spoils? Don't you think it's too early? The first thing we need to deal with now is to defeat the humans. As for the spoils, cough cough. We'll divide the spoils according to the contribution in this battle. The old shaman finished speaking in one breath. As if he had exhausted all his energy, he sat aside and did not speak anymore. Okay, we'll divide it according to the old shaman's method. The gnoll and the orc looked at each other and nodded in agreement. Sulen did not know that the gnoll, and the troll tribes were preparing for war. He was now listening to the little succubus report. The little succubus body was curvy and very petite. After coming in, she sat directly on Sulen's lap and began to report the output of the underground world during this period. This month, 103 pounds of gold, 1,526 pounds of silver, 11 tons of iron, 23 gems, 37 grams of mithril. How much spider silk was produced? The little succubus but was very elastic, and it made Sulen feel a little hot. He reached out to hold the little succubus and put her in a proper position. This month, 56 bundles of spider silk were produced. I've already given them to Hathaway to deal with. Hey, be gentle, don't tear my stockings. This is the last one I have this month. I'm paying attention. Sulen's movements were very skillful. The little succubus was wearing a slim-fit dress today, and it outlined the curves of her body incisively and vividly. Sulen, who had already trained his spear skills to the Grandmaster level, had long been able to move at will. The two of them were like inlays, and it was seamless. Move a little. Move a little. I can't, my whole body is numb. Half an hour later, the battle was over. Chris's body was as limp as a beautiful snake. Sulen let her rest here and got up to tidy up the scattered documents on the ground. I told you to be gentle. This stocking is ruined again. The little succubus who had recovered looked at the damaged stockings and complained. Next month, the spider silk production will increase. I'll give you more, Sulen said with a smile. Humph, that's more like it. The little succubus snorted. Sulen was secretly amused. I'll give you more, but you'll still be torn apart by me. After the main body of the wizard tower was completed, Hathaway, Karina, Alex, and Grace began to build the inside of the wizard tower. The wizard tower needed a lot of energy channels to transmit the energy from the elemental pool to every part of the wizard tower. This required a lot of magic crystals. The magic crystals produced by the crystal beasts in the secret plane had to be first supplied to the wizard tower for a long time. The wizard tower also needed to build an elemental pool. This was the source of energy for the wizard tower. For a large wizard tower like the one built in Northern Town, a normal elemental pool could not supply it. The size of an elemental pool was divided by the amount of energy stored in it. A standard elemental pool of the lowest level, after being filled with elemental water, would contain 100,000 degrees of energy. Wizards set the energy consumption of a level 1 spell, Arcane Missile, to 1 degree. A 100,000 degree elemental pool would have enough energy to cast 100,000 arcane missiles. This kind of elemental pool was usually equipped with a small wizard tower. A 100,000 degree elemental pool could not drive the wizard tower to fly. Even the wizard tower's ultimate weapon, the magic pulse rail gun, could only be fired once, and it needed to be charged. This 100,000 degree elemental pool was not good enough for Sulen. Even Hathaway was not willing to install it in this wizard tower. This wizard tower was designed and built according to the standards of a legendary wizard. Even the space reserved for upgrading to a floating space tower was prepared. Therefore, the elemental pool that Hathaway was going to build was a large one. The energy standard was more than 1 million degrees. At present, the upper limit of such a large elemental pool was 5 million degrees. It was not cost-effective to build a bigger one. The construction of an elemental pool required many magic materials such as magic gemstones, mithril, magic steel, arcane dust, astral dust, and so on. The larger the elemental pool was, the more materials were needed. When it exceeded 1 million degrees, the number would increase exponentially. In fact, the materials needed to build an elemental pool that could hold 5 million degrees could easily build 5 elemental pools of 1 million degrees, and there would still be leftovers. Therefore, basically no one would spend a lot of materials and energy to build an elemental pool of 5 million degrees. Generally speaking, an elemental pool of 2 million degrees was enough, unless you wanted to build a floating space city. However, even a super-large elemental pool with 5 million degrees of energy could not make a medium-sized city fly. The most cost-effective was an elemental pool of 2 million degrees, which was what Hathaway was going to build. The location of the elemental pool was at the bottom of the wizard tower. There were 3 underground floors of the wizard tower, with an area of 3,000 square meters. This floor was all built with obsidian, and it was blessed with hardening to be strong enough. Chapter 334. The elemental pool technology was actually an energy supply device in the early days of the Arcane Empire. Since the emergence of the Mice Energy Core, the elemental pool technology had gradually been converted to civilian use. It used the elemental channel technology, which poured the energy of the 4 major elemental planes into the elemental pool through the principle of elemental siphoning. The elemental pool technology was mature. Although the energy efficiency was not high, there was no need to worry about exhaustion. As long as the elemental pool was not damaged, it could continue to operate for thousands of years without being damaged. In many relics of the Arcane Empire, the magic constructs could still operate normally after thousands of years. A large part of the reason was that the elemental pool continued to provide energy. Hathaway built the elemental pool on the 3rd underground floor. It was the energy center of the wizard tower. Through the energy channel, it could complete the transmission of magic and transmit the energy in the elemental pool to the inside of the wizard tower. Magical crystals were the most cost-effective material for making energy channels. As a matter of fact, the ancient arcanists were able to obtain large amounts of magic crystals cheaply by breeding crystal beasts. This was something that the wizards of today could not compare with. After all, not everyone could afford to cover an entire wizard tower with magic crystals. The third underground floor of the wizard tower. Hathaway had made a circular pool with a diameter of 20 meters in the wizard tower. The pool was located in the center of the wizard tower. The surrounding ground was paved with white marble blocks. These marbles had been treated with magic. They were hard and durable and had a good insulation effect. The depth of the pool was 1.5 meters. The whole body was piled with marble. After the piling was completed, all the marbles were connected into a whole body using stone to mud, and then solidified with mud to stone. There was also a layer of thorium coating on the surface of the marble. Thorium was a substitute for mithril. Its nature was similar to mithril, but the effect was much worse. The whole pool was coated with a layer of thorium. Next, Hathaway needed to use mithril to engrave a super-large energy-gathering array in the pool. This process alone consumed a lot of magic materials. Although the value of thorium was not as high as mithril, it was still very expensive. A full layer of thorium consumed 200 pounds of thorium, which was worth 200 kinnar. In addition to the mithril used to engrave the runic array, only the rich could afford it. Next, various magic materials needed to be added to the elemental pool. Arcane dust and astral dust needed to be integrated into it to reduce the consumption of energy conversion. After these materials were perfectly integrated into the elemental pool, the basic structure of the elemental pool was completed. Of course, this project was not made by Hathaway alone. Everyone in the wizard tower, including Sulen, was involved. It took them 3 days to complete the construction of the elemental pool. After completing the elemental pool, the work was only half done. Next, he still had to engrave 4 runic magic circles that connected the 4 major elemental planes. Hathaway took out a silver-white carving knife and carefully engraved the runes in the 4 directions of the elemental pool. The elemental extraction and transmission circle was very complicated. A slight mistake would result in failure and a new one would be needed. After Hathaway was done, she summoned a ball of elemental fire and controlled it to melt a piece of mithril. She then used the wizard's hand to merge the melted mithril into the rune circle. Hathaway was the only one who could do this. After all, she was the only master alchemist in Northern Town City. After the construction was completed, Hathaway built a platform about 1 meter wide in the center of the elemental pool. She then engraved a complex runic magic circle on the platform. In the center of the runic magic circle, a diamond the size of an egg was integrated into it. Next, 4 magic gems were needed to replace the earth, fire, wind, water, and fire gems. 4 magic gems of the same quality and size were integrated into the 4 corners of the elemental pool. As the gems were integrated, the entire elemental pool shook slightly. Then, traces of strange energy appeared in the elemental pool. At the same time, Hathaway, Karina, Alex, and Grace stepped forward and stood on the earth, fire, water, and wind elemental runic magic circles. A powerful elemental energy appeared in the surroundings. This elemental energy wrapped around the 4 of them in an orderly manner and lifted their bodies into the air. The melodious and mellow Nesser language echoed. This was a spell used to communicate with the 4 elemental planes. As the voice echoed, generation after generation of silver elemental energy rose, and 4 complex runic arrays appeared on the bodies of the 4 people. Soon after, the space of the entire 3rd floor of the wizard tower began to shake. In the next second, 4 spatial cracks appeared on the runic arrays beside the 4 people. Looking through the distorted spatial cracks, one could see the deep blue sea, the boundless sky, the thick and solid earth, and the world of flames burning the sky behind the spatial cracks. These 4 cracks were connected to the 4 great elemental planes. As soon as they appeared, abundant elemental energy appeared in the 4 runic magic circles. Then, the 4 elemental energy poured into the platform in the center of the elemental pool. After the earth, fire, water, and wind elemental energy underwent a strange fusion, azure spring water flowed down from the platform. It was the elemental energy that had condensed into liquid form. Following the appearance of the elemental water, the 4 spellcasters sighed in relief. As the elemental energy stabilized, the 4 elemental channels slowly disappeared. However, the elemental energy continued to appear and fuse with the elemental water, appearing in the elemental pool. The elemental pool was successfully built. At the same time, the elemental water started to appear in the elemental pool. The concentration of elemental energy in the entire 3rd floor of the underground floor started to rapidly increase. In less than 10 minutes, the concentration of elemental energy had increased by several times. The elemental pool made by Hathaway could hold 2 million degrees of energy. It could support the consumption of the entire elemental pool and also support the daily consumption of a large golem legion. Naturally, the cost of such an elemental pool wasn't low. Just the cost of the materials was more than 1 million kinnar. The existence of the elemental pool transformed the entire wizard tower into a place of active elemental energy. Within the range of the wizard tower, all spellcasters' mana recovery speed would be accelerated, their meditation efficiency would increase, the difficulty of casting spells would be reduced, and their mana consumption would be reduced. Elemental pool, large current status, charging. Current energy, 100,000/2,000,000. Changed environment, land of elements. Casting difficulty -20%. Casting consumption -20%. Mana recovery +50%. Meditation efficiency +25%. The elemental pool would change this area into a land of elements. Living in such an environment would have many benefits. Different environments would promote the evolution of creatures in different directions. According to some books and records left behind by arcanists, some floating space cities that entered the astral plane had evolved into a subspecies of humans because they had lived in the astral plane for a long time. The humans in the floating space cities had lived in the astral plane for a long time. This kind of astral plane humans had a longer lifespan than ordinary humans. Moreover, talented astral plane humans would awaken some spiritual talents or master some spell-like energy. These people were born as psionicists and could easily become wizards. Of course, living in such an environment for a long time would also cause some problems. For example, after appearing in some areas where elemental energy was scarce, these astral plane humans would not be able to adapt. It was like a fish out of water. Although it would not be life-threatening, their spellcasting ability would basically be crippled. In serious cases, they would even develop symptoms of magic addiction. Of course, after adapting for a while, these problems would disappear. Therefore, astral plane humans did not like to enter the material plane. Although the land of elements was rich in elemental energy, this situation would not occur. After all, the concentration of elemental energy could not be compared to the astral plane. Moreover, because the astral plane was not bound by the rules of the material plane, human souls could have deeper contact with this kind of energy. In fact, astral plane humans evolved from the soul, not from the body. After the construction of the elemental pool was completed, the construction of other areas in the wizard tower began. There was a treasure room, a prison, a living room, a guest room, a library, a bedroom, a laboratory, a meditation room, a console, a control center, a runic barrier, a training ground, a warehouse, a war room, a golem army, and an ecological garden. Many facilities needed to be built. Among them, areas such as the living room, guest room, bedroom, library, and these were built very quickly. However, the construction of some areas was much more difficult. For example, the ecological park. Sulen intended to learn the construction method of the secret realm and build one of the floors of the wizard tower into an ecological park. This ecological park would use space folding and space expansion technology. This technology could expand a one-story wizard tower that was originally only about 2,000 square meters by 10 times or even 100 times. Then, space folding technology would be used to place this ecological park in the wizard tower. Hathaway was not very familiar with space folding and space expansion technology, so she did not directly use it in the wizard tower. If there was a problem with this kind of spell, the consequences would be very serious. Sulen did not want his newly built wizard tower to be broken or tilted. Only after he was familiar with it would Sulen use this technology in the wizard tower. After the wizard tower had an ecological park, many special experiments could be carried out. Other than the ecological park, the laboratory and meditation room in the Wizard Tower were also very important. These two places needed to be isolated with rune circles. No matter if it was an experiment or meditation, it was taboo to disturb. If there was a problem, the consequences would be very serious. The rest of the places, such as the treasure room and the prison, also needed to be strictly protected. The construction of the entire Wizard Tower was progressing very slowly. Such a huge Wizard Tower, with 10 floors and 120 meters, had an area of 30,000 square meters. It would take a lot of time to only rely on 4 wizards. Laying the energy channel in the entire Wizard Tower was not a small project. Chapter 335. Large amounts of resources were consumed, and the Wizard Tower was being built bit by bit. At the same time, the construction of the North Town City did not stop. Sulan had already passed down the city's construction plan and steps. Large amounts of basic construction had already been started, and a large amount of manpower and resources had been invested into the construction of the North Town City. The orc laborers lifted heavy stones to tamp down the road, while the goblin slaves flattened the bricks one by one. The gnolls pushed heavy stone rollers to flatten the ground, while the kobolds swung their hoes to dig for ores. Merchant groups from all over the continent were transporting all kinds of resources to the North Town City to be sold, and then they would leave with other goods. The whole city was full of life. However, the number of monsters around the North Town City had increased recently. As more and more crops were planted in the fields outside the city, goblins and kobolds would often sneak in to steal food. Although the North Town City had an army patrolling regularly, many farms far from the city were still damaged to varying degrees. There was nothing they could do about it. Winter was coming, and food was scarce in the wasteland. The goblins and kobolds had started stealing from the farms to survive. 100,000 acres of land was too big, and the northern wasteland was too vast. The North Town City's army could not cover every area. In order to reduce the damage to the farms, Sulan had no choice but to start clearing the land again. Of course, it was not without benefits. The North Town City was developing, and it needed a large amount of strong labor. The goblins, kobolds, and gnolls were here to work for the North Town City. Whether it was the goblins, kobolds, or gnolls, they didn't know how to farm. Instead, they liked to plunder, so they often died in winter due to lack of food. Although Suluan treated these monsters as slaves, he also let them eat their fill. As long as they worked in Northern Town City, goblins, kobolds, and gnolls wouldn't starve to death. Compared to other lords of this era, Suluan was very kind and benevolent. Of course, those who died from exhaustion or accidents were not included. Ever since the farms outside the North Town City were destroyed, Sulan had sent out scouts to track down the monsters. Even the Cryopterus had joined the search. With the Cryopterus in the air and the scouts, Sulan believed they would soon find the monsters. As expected, it did not take long for the monsters to be found. The monsters were hiding in a forest. Sulan would not let these slaves who had delivered themselves to his door. 30 miles outside the North Town City, in a forest. My lord. A scout came out of the dense bushes and quickly walked by Sulan. The monsters are hiding in the forest. They don't seem to have noticed us. Get ready for battle. Don't let any of them escape this time. Sulan spat out the straw in his mouth and waved to the army behind him. This time, apart from the regular army, Sulan also brought a lot of militia. Training alone would not make good soldiers. Only after strict training and experiencing a few battles could the militia truly transform into soldiers. During this time, more than 100 crossbows had been produced in the North Town City. They had all been given to the militia to equip, while the rest of the militia were armed with other weapons. The tribe that the scouts found was a tribe of bugbears. Bugbears were like goblins. They were evil, stupid, and greedy in nature. However, as the most powerful subspecies of goblins, they were tall and strong. It could be seen from their name that bugbears were as strong as bears. Sulan didn't care if these bugbears were strong or not. In his eyes, bugbears were very good slaves. They were strong and worked hard, but they ate a lot. Bugbears were as poor as goblins, but their discipline was a lot better. When the army of the North Town City quietly surrounded them, the bugbears realized that something was wrong. As creatures that lived in the wastelands, they were highly alert to danger. This was a medium-sized tribe of 2,000 people. There were 300 bugbears, 500 earth goblins, and the rest were green goblins. After realizing that the situation was bad, the bugbears and earth goblins immediately formed a formation. After seeing the bugbears' movements, Sulan immediately understood that they had been discovered. There was no time to explain, so Sulan immediately ordered the army to attack. The camp of the goblins was very simple. Many of them had only dug shallow pits. The camp was very messy and dirty, so Sulan didn't let the army rush in. The bugbears and earth goblins had already formed a formation. Although their weapons looked very simple, their formation was very decent. Seeing this situation, Sulan was also interested. It was a good opportunity to let the militia see some blood. Crossbowmen, get into formation. With his order, the crossbowmen behind him immediately got into formation. It only took half a minute for them to complete the formation. Load. Asterisk creak creak creak. Asterisk the sound of crossbows being loaded echoed. More than 100 crossbows were loaded, and the cold arrows flickered with a chilling light. Aim. The first row of crossbowmen took a step forward and squatted down. At the same time, they leveled their heavy crossbows and pointed at the goblins not far away. The goblins saw that there weren't many enemies, so they immediately waved their weapons and rushed over. Even the bugbears maintained their formation and raised their simple wooden shields and spears as they moved forward. 5 shots ready. Sulan raised his arm and swung it down. Release. Bang bang bang. The dense sound of bowstrings kept ringing, and then a row of crossbow bolts flew out in an instant. The goblins in front fell like grass being mowed down, and some crossbow bolts even penetrated 2 goblins in succession. In an instant, a large number of goblins in the front row died. After the crossbowmen fired their arrows, they immediately retreated to the back through the pre-reserved passage. Then, they stepped on the foot of the crossbow and began to load the crossbow with both hands. The second row of crossbowmen quickly stepped forward and fired the crossbow bolts in their hands. Then, the third row, the fourth row, and the fifth row. The whole crossbow formation was like moving clouds and flowing water. It was like a war machine running at full speed. Every crossbowman was like an insignificant part of this machine. After the fifth row of crossbowmen finished firing, the first row of crossbowmen, who had already been prepared, went forward and fired again. They continued to attack according to the command. Row after row of crossbow bolts were fired continuously. The aggressive goblins were immediately stunned. A large number of goblins died, and the bugbears in the battle formation did not have any effect. Ordinary wooden shields could not stop the crossbow bolts at all. For a time, the goblins suffered heavy casualties. Sulan did not let the crossbowmen attack for too long. After 4 rounds of attack, the goblins were completely defeated. Sulan did not let the crossbowmen continue to attack. After all, he still needed the slaves to work. After seeing the goblins being defeated, Sulan immediately ordered the regular army to capture them. The whole battle only lasted for a dozen minutes. It took a lot of time to capture the slaves. Fortunately, Sulan had ordered the soldiers to surround the place in advance. Except for the dead goblins, the rest of the goblins were all captured. After the cleanup was completed, Sulan ordered people to escort the slaves back to northern Battlefront City. He continued to lead the rest of the soldiers to continue the cleanup in the wasteland. In the next few days, Sulan used the opportunity of clearing out the monsters as an opportunity to train the crossbowmen. Not only did he capture a large number of slaves, but he also let the militia complete the special training and become soldiers. After more than a year of development, there were many dog-headed traders, goblins, and jackals among the slaves in northern Battlefront City. In order to obtain a better life, these monsters had completely adapted to their identities and helped northern Battlefront City to transform and exploit their own kind. All the troublemakers were picked out and locked in prison or killed directly. The other monsters quickly adapted to their identities. The number of slaves in northern Battlefront City increased again, and the construction of the city gradually sped up. Sulen planned to establish a principality after northern Battlefront City was completed. In fact, northern Battlefront City could already be declared a state, but he did not want northern Battlefront City to be a construction site when the declaration was made. Sulen wanted northern Battlefront City to be a dignified, beautiful, prosperous, and powerful city when the declaration was made. He did not want to make it look like a self-entertaining ceremony. In the outer city of northern Battlefront City, a large number of slaves were digging the foundation and laying the roads under the instructions of the supervisors. All the roads in northern Battlefront City had to be paved. The main roads were made of bricks or slabs, while the other roads could be paved with stones. Every street had to have public toilets and bathrooms, and every street had to have a small park with fake mountains and fountains. Every street also had to have a fountain. The outer city of northern Battlefront City was divided by roads. The whole city was like a giant chessboard, and the blank areas on the chessboard were the streets and markets. Hundreds of thousands of slaves and workers were building under the blueprint. After a series of exterminations, the number of monsters in the territory was greatly reduced. Many places were completely devoid of monsters. To prevent the monsters from regenerating and destroying the farms, Sulen assigned the soldiers in northern Battlefront City to other places. Apart from leaving 2,000 soldiers in the city, the rest of the soldiers were divided into two groups by Sulen. Half of them were stationed at the edge of the territory in groups of 20. Their job was to warn the others, and the other half would lead the army to exterminate the invading monsters after receiving the warning. At the same time, the groups of 20 were responsible for exterminating small groups of monsters that appeared in the territory. While northern Battlefront City was thriving, the dark clouds of war were slowly approaching. Chapter 336. Northern Wilderness. In a desolate and barren gravel area, an adventurer team was slowly moving forward. This team was a standard 5-man team. There was an armored warrior, a rogue, a ranger archer, a dwarf defender, and an experienced captain. In fact, the best adventurer team also needed spellcasters, wizards, or warlocks, but spellcasters rarely joined this kind of team unless they were looking for something. Of course, this kind of situation usually meant that things would be very troublesome. Boss. We've already walked so far. Should we take a break first? The armored warrior in the team said as he stretched his shoulders. As a warrior, he was wearing a mail armor and an inlaid iron scale armor, plus some other things and weapons. It could be said that he carried the most weight. Even if the warrior's physical fitness was good, he still felt tired. The middle-aged man in the lead stopped and looked around at the sky, then looked at the other team members, and then said, "Well, let's go ahead and rest for a while." As a qualified leader of an adventurer team, there were many things that he had to pay attention to. Although he wasn't the strongest in the team, he was definitely the most experienced. When going on an adventure, he had to take everyone's stamina consumption into consideration. The best situation was to have enough stamina whenever they encountered an enemy. After coming to a few big trees, Captain Karen ordered the rogue, Ben, go around and check the surroundings. Report back immediately if you find anything. The others should take the time to rest. Understood. The rogue nodded, then leaped lightly and quickly scouted the surroundings. This adventurer team set off from Northtown City. Northtown City had now become the main foothold for many adventurer teams when entering the northern wilderness. Although the northern wilderness was desolate and cold with a harsh environment, it still produced a lot of good things. Adventurer teams often returned from here with a full load, but there were also many adventurer teams that never came back. About a quarter of an hour later, a sharp whistle sounded, and several people who were resting under a tree immediately stood up. The captain in the lead said in a deep voice, "There's a situation. Everyone, follow me." A small team quickly rushed in the direction of the sound. These people were very experienced. Even if they were moving quickly, they still squatted and used the surrounding grass as cover. As an adventurer team, they lived a life of danger. Once they discovered a situation, they would immediately send out a signal. Stay hidden. A ranger suddenly said as if he had noticed something. The team that was moving forward immediately crouched on the ground and hid their bodies completely. Then, they carefully looked around. What did you find? The captain asked in a low voice. Look at the sky. The ranger pointed to the sky, which was clear and boundless. Karen looked for a while but didn't see anything. Just as she was about to ask, her eyes suddenly swept over a black spot. The black dot quickly grew bigger, and a wyvern appeared in the sky. On the wyvern's back was a green-skinned figure. It was a beast man. It's the orc air cavalry. Karen's eyes narrowed. Be careful and hide, don't let them discover you. After clearly seeing the appearance of the black dot, Captain Karen was shocked and hurriedly had the others hide. After everyone hid in the bushes, the two-legged flying dragon quickly flew over them, but it didn't discover the people hiding here. After seeing the two-legged flying dragon leave, the four people breathed a sigh of relief and then carefully moved in the direction of the rogue's signal. Soon, they found the figure of the rogue not far ahead. At this time, he was wearing a khaki cloak, a straw hat, and a lot of straw on his body. This outfit looked very professional at first glance. After seeing everyone, he crouched on the ground and gestured to everyone, while the others carefully crept over. What did you find? Everyone imitated the appearance of the rogue, put on a simple disguise, and then asked carefully. Look there. Hiss. This is, after seeing the situation in front of them clearly, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. They saw that under the mound in the distance, along with the rise and fall of the earth, an army was continuously advancing. This army was a little strange. There were orcs, gnolls, and trolls. The huge army was slowly approaching from afar. The army was winding, and it was at least a dozen miles long. It looked like a winding dragon. This is the orc army? The dwarf next to him asked in a low voice. At the front of the army, there were some wolf riders. As a mobile troop class among the orcs, there were still a lot of wolf riders. Following closely behind were some tall gnolls. Unlike ordinary gnolls, these gnolls were high-level gnolls. They were powerful, bloody, and brutal. In the rear of the army, the trolls were slowly moving forward in armor. Why do I think it looks like an alliance of several races? Such a long army, there are at least tens of thousands of people. A person next to him whispered. More than tens of thousands, at least 30,000 people. What are these gnolls, orcs, and trolls forming an alliance for? The rogue said. The middle-aged captain rubbed his chin and then said, which enemy in the wilderness is worthy of their attention? Let them join forces. Northern Town City. Everyone looked at each other and replied in unison. Immediately send this information back to Northern Town City. Let's go. As long as we successfully send it back, according to the Lord's generosity, we will be rich this time. At this moment, everyone in the team immediately reached an agreement. After the evil creature incident last time, Sulen issued a large number of wilderness intelligence gathering missions. He wanted to use the strength of these adventurers to gather information. As soon as the voice fell, the rogue in front said in a serious voice, "The situation is not good. The wolf riders are coming. Their dog nose is very sensitive." The ground shook, and then a large number of wolf riders began to disperse and investigate the area around the team. These wolf riders moved quickly, and their mounts had a sensitive sense of smell. They wore simple leather armor and wielded cane scimitars in their hands. Their strength was not bad, and they were qualified scouts. Not good. We are now on the path of the wolf riders. If we don't leave, they will find us. The rogue said. Retreat, retreat now. The captain did not hesitate and immediately made a decision. Woo woo woo. A wolf's howl sounded in the wilderness. Everyone no longer hesitated and immediately retreated. The wolf riders moved very fast in the wilderness. If they did not retreat now, they would not have a chance. The wolf riders could easily catch up with them. The group quickly retreated. After retreating a little, they did not care about continuing to hide their bodies and accelerated in the direction they came from. The wolf riders were very fast. It did not take long for them to reach the place where everyone was hiding. Woo woo. A warg sniffed around and howled in the direction where the few of them had escaped. There is the smell of humans. Chase them, we can't let them escape. Kill them all. Several orcs immediately reacted, their faces showing ferocious expressions. Woo woo woo. With a howl, the wolf riders no longer hesitated and began to quickly chase in the direction of the smell. A team of wolf riders chased behind, and another pair of wolf riders flanked them. The adventurer team was running at full speed. The rogue took out a magic scroll and directly tore it open without hesitation. A wave of elemental energy was released from the scroll. Group haste. A pale green light enveloped everyone, and wind elemental energy surrounded everyone. Everyone who was running felt their bodies become lighter, and their speed instantly doubled. The group quickly ran in the direction of the northern city. These magic scrolls were sold by Hathaway's alchemy shop in the northern city. It sold rune scrolls, magic potions, enchanted weapons, and many other types of items. It also bought all kinds of enchanted items in large quantities. Many adventurer teams would spend a sum of kinnar here to buy life-saving items or potions. Very recently, the adventurer team in front of them had bought one. Group haste lasted for an hour. After using it, it could greatly increase one's speed. With the effect of this scroll, the wolf riders would not be able to catch up to them for an hour. When the wolf riders saw the humans suddenly accelerate, they immediately had their mounts chase after them. However, compared to horses, mount wolves had much less stamina and couldn't charge long distances. Although the wolf riders kept chasing, the human silhouettes were still getting farther and farther away. But at this time, two wyvern riders suddenly rose from the rear of the orc army. As the orc tribe's only flying combat unit, wyverns were few in number. Moreover, it was difficult to tame them. Under normal circumstances, the orcs wouldn't dispatch such an army. It was clear that after seeing the humans about to escape, the orcs finally couldn't hold back. The two aerial knights quickly flew past, their huge wings constantly flapping. Although the humans were very fast after using haste, the distance between them was quickly shrinking under the pursuit of the aerial knights. We're in trouble, it's the aerial knights. With our current speed, we can't escape, the captain said anxiously as he looked back at the approaching silhouettes in the sky. Split up and escape. There are only two of them. The five of us will split up and run. If one escapes, one escapes. After escaping, immediately return to the city and warn the Lord. If the others die, quickly distribute the rewards to the deceased's relatives and friends. Please. Understood. Agreed. That's good. Everyone, I wish you good luck. Run for your lives. After saying that, everyone immediately scattered and fled. Chapter 337. North Town City, Lord's Castle. Sulen, who had just finished his special training, was soaking in the hot spring. Anna and Angela, who were wearing translucent gauze, were helping him wash his body. The hot spring was surrounded by steam, and the two maids' fair, jade-like skin was faintly discernible under the gauze. If there was water on it, it would be no different from being transparent. After soaking in the hot spring, Sulen wore a thin linen robe and went back to his study to deal with government affairs. At this time, there was a rush of footsteps outside the door, followed by a series of knocks. It was already afternoon, and the meeting hall was about to get off work. Under normal circumstances, everyone would report the situation at this time, let alone report to Sulen. If someone came at this time, there was a high chance that something big had happened. Come in. Sulen said as he put down the document. A servant pushed the door open and hurriedly said, "My lord, the beacon tower reported that there is an army coming from the northeast." Sulen's face changed, and he asked in a deep voice, "How many people? How far are they from the territory?" The specific information was reported to us by an adventurer. Our patrol team found him being chased by the wolf riders. After they rescued him, they told us the news. When they sent someone back to report, they also sent people to investigate. I believe there will be more complete information soon. Where is the adventurer? Sulen asked. He is waiting in the servant's room. Bring him here. Yes, my lord. About a few minutes later, Sulen saw the adventurer in the study. The adventurer looked very bad. There were bloody marks on his face and arms, and his armor was damaged. There were also a few bandaged wounds on his body, and there were traces of blood seeping out. Judging by his appearance, he should be a rogue. Sulen looked at him and said to the servant next to him, "Give him a chair." "My lord, please save my companions. They are probably still being chased by the orcs," the adventurer said anxiously. "Don't worry, the patrol team has already gone to rescue them. If they are still alive, they will definitely save them. Now, tell me what you saw. How many people are there in the orc army, and how far are they from here?" Next, the adventurer carefully described the information he knew in detail. After hearing that the enemy was not only orcs, but also gnolls and trolls, Suluen's face became a little dignified. The army was more than 30,000 people, which made Suluen frown. "Activate war mobilization immediately." After listening to the adventurer's information, Sulen immediately said, "The army will be on alert immediately. All leave will be cancelled. Except for the injured, all soldiers will return to the army. Notify Centaur City and tell them to immediately move to Northtown City and Mirror Lake City. Centaur City will be temporarily abandoned. Inform all citizens, caravans, and adventurers that Northern Town City is now in a state of emergency. All city gates are closed, and all serfs and refugees working outside the city are to return to the city. Harvest the food that is about to be harvested. If you can't harvest it, destroy it all. Don't leave a single grain for the enemy. Send out war mobilization orders. The council hall will return to work immediately. Ask them to assist the security forces in maintaining order in the city. Ask them to organize logistics teams to distribute food and supplies. Send out orders to the security forces. No one is allowed to go out on the streets without a token from the city hall or the army. Violators will be arrested and interrogated immediately. Anyone who dares to take advantage of the situation and cause trouble is allowed to be executed immediately." After a series of orders were sent out, Northern Town City immediately entered a state of war readiness. The markets began to close, and so did the taverns. The refugees and serfs outside the city also returned to the city. The goblins, kobolds, gnolls, and orcs were all locked up. The urgent sound of a bell rang, and everyone knew that war was coming. The army began to move immediately. All the soldiers that were sent out to maintain order in the territory and chase away the bandits were all called back. At the same time, Sulen also temporarily recruited some soldiers from the centaurs and half-elves. This was the agreement they signed when they joined Northern Town City. After arranging all these things, Sulen went to the Weapon Bureau. After a period of busy work, the Weapon Bureau had produced a total of 500 crossbows after adopting the assembly line production method. Now, all the crossbows needed to be equipped to the army. In addition, all kinds of war resources were being moved out of the warehouse. Bundles of arrows, weapons, armor, rolling wood, stones, and kerosene were brought out. Hathaway and Chris, who had received the news, also came to help. Karina and Grace had already gone back to recruit more people. Alex originally wanted to bring the harpies from Eagle Fort, but Sulen asked her to wait. It was not good to reveal all the cards in one go. Eagle Fort was located in a very hidden place. The 3,000 harpies were also a surprise force. If used well, they could turn the tide of the battle. He did not want to expose himself right now. Many caravans that came to trade with Northern Town City chose to leave before the enemy arrived. Of course, some caravans expressed their willingness to fight with Northern Town City. Many adventurers in the city also asked to join. For these people, Sulen sent people to do a simple reorganization. He did not expect these people to go to the battlefield. He just wanted them to follow the security army to maintain order. The next morning, the centaurs brought a lot of resources to Northern Town City. The Little Mare mission brought 400 centaurs to the drill ground. After sending the message yesterday afternoon, Mission immediately asked the centaurs to pack up. Luckily, the centaurs were nomadic, so it was easy for them to leave. It only took them one night to prepare everything. The next day, before dawn, they left Centaur City and went to Northern Town City. Sir Sulen, I'm here. After seeing Sulen, the Little Mare Mission's eyes lit up. She naturally went up and gave him a hug. One had to admit that the centaurs' bodies were really good. You came at the right time. Your equipment is ready. I'll take you to get it now, Sulen said to the Little Mare with a smile. This time, I need you centaurs to fight outside the city. As cavalry, you can't be trapped in the city. Your mission is to harass the enemy and cooperate with us during the battle. Someone will contact you when the time comes, Sulen said as he walked. Understood, the Little Mare nodded. North Town City had less than 1,000 cavalrymen, and all of them were centaurs. If there were 5,000, no, 3,000 centaur cavalrymen, he would set up a camp outside the city to form a triangle with the city. No matter which side the army attacked, North Town City would be able to deal with it easily. There were less than 1,000 people here. If they set up a camp, they would not be able to hold it. Therefore, Sulen simply let them harass the enemy outside the city and suddenly attack at the critical moment. This is your equipment. Sulen brought the centaurs to a warehouse and pointed at the weapons and armor in front of them. Centaurs usually brought their own weapons. They were good at centaur longbows. Sulen gave them inlaid iron scale armor, chain armor, spears, and javelins. They were meant to harass the enemy and needed mobility, so he did not prepare heavy armor. Seeing the warehouse full of equipment, the Little Mare was so surprised that she could not close her mouth. She immediately ordered people to distribute the equipment. After arranging the centaurs, Sulen left. Soon, a messenger came in and gave the latest information to Sulen. After taking the leather tube, Sulen took out the information and quickly browsed through it. The information was about the enemy sent back by the scouts. After some investigation, he finally had a clear understanding of the enemy's strength. Different from the 30,000 people before, this time the orcs, gnolls, and trolls had gathered a total of 40,000 soldiers. There were trolls, wolf riders, sky riders, elite gnolls, and orcs. They were all very powerful. The scouts even found some simple siege weapons. This army was still 60 miles away from Northern Town City. The wolf riders could reach them in a single charge. The war came faster than Sulen expected. In the afternoon, the first wolf riders appeared outside the city. These wolf riders ran around the city and kept roaring. Sometimes, they would purposely make a fierce face. This was one of their psychological tactics. If they encountered a timid soldier, it was very likely that they would be scared to the point that their limbs would go soft. But this time, their calculations were wrong. Most of the people in Northern Town City were professional soldiers. All of them had been through many fierce battles. The wolf riders' faces were completely useless. Tell Mission to take some people to clean up these barking dogs. They're too noisy, Sulen said expressionlessly. Soon, the order was given, and the 800 centaurs were ready to set off. Just as the wolf riders were demonstrating in groups of 3 to 5, they were surprised to see the city gates suddenly open. Just when they thought the enemy inside was about to surrender, a thunderous sound of horse hooves rang out. Not good, it's the cavalry. Get information, get information. When the leader of the wolf riders heard the voice, he instantly shivered. They were very clear about the battle between cavalry. With the wolf riders' current scattered state, it would be a complete massacre if they were to face the cavalry. The centaurs didn't even give the wolf riders a chance to organize themselves. The 800 centaurs charged towards the wolf riders as soon as they came out of the city. The centaurs immediately drew their bows and nocked their arrows as soon as they were within range. A wave of arrows rained down on a large number of wolf riders. The distance between the two sides was very short. After only 3 rounds of arrows, both sides began to engage in close combat. However, at this moment, the leading centaur whistled, and a shocking scene appeared. In an instant, all the centaurs turned their horses around and completed a turn at top speed. At the same time, another wave of arrows rained down on them. Chapter 338. Seeing the centaur's action, Su Luan was also surprised. Only a centaur could do such a trick. Even if there were humans who could do it, there were only a few who could do it. Most people would be directly thrown off in the extreme speed, not to mention shooting arrows at this time. Their racial talent was something no other race could compare to. After a few waves of arrow rain, the wolf riders were completely scattered. They were not scattered in the first place, so after being caught off guard, they began to run. However, the centaurs would not let these orcs go. The hatred between them and the orcs was a life and death struggle. Su Luan watched as the centaurs used all kinds of methods to slowly wipe out the wolf riders in front of them. Other than the ones that ran away in advance, the rest all died on the land outside the city. He believed that with the help of the orcs' flesh and blood, the plants on that land would flourish even more next year. After clearing out the wolf riders, Mehian did not return to the city. Instead, he waved at Su Luan from afar, and the centaurs left in another direction. The centaurs were heading towards Mirror Lake City, which would be their supply area. After the centaurs took care of the wolf riders, no other orcs came to fight. In the evening, the orc army finally arrived. The army of more than 40,000 people was a huge black mass. It was a perfect example of the saying, 10,000 people is endless. The army did not rush to attack just because the wolf riders had failed. After arriving, the army began to set up camp. After seeing the army on guard, Su Luan gave up on the idea of attacking before they settled down. This army was very vigilant against the northern city. They did not let their guard down just because they outnumbered the northern city by a few times. Su Luan watched for a while. After seeing that there was no opportunity to attack, he arranged for people to be on guard and left the city wall. The night was dark, and the empty wilderness was very quiet. The stars were shining in the sky. The northern city and the orc army did not do anything this night, but both sides knew that this was only the last bit of peace before the war. Su Luan slept very well at night. Hathaway, Chris, Alex, and Phyllis were all there. Early the next morning, the orcs' attack began. The orc army did not charge forward immediately. Instead, they sent a large number of goblins and kobolds as cannon fodder. These monsters were like weeds in the wilderness. The orcs could gather a large number of monsters as cannon fodder as they advanced. These goblins and kobolds were forced to rush towards the city wall under the supervision of the orc army. The humans guarding the city walls began to fire arrows. Su Luan was very clear about the beastmen's intentions. They were trying to deplete the city's defensive resources. Su Luan didn't care about this. After all, the northern citadel had plenty of war resources. Even if they weren't enough, he could still transfer more from the underground world through the teleportation formation. Archers, ready. Seeing a large number of enemies approaching, the messengers quickly passed down the order, and all the archers began to draw their bows. 80 meters ahead, shoot back and cover the area with a rain of arrows. Bang! The bowstring vibrated, and countless arrows flew up like a dark cloud. After reaching the highest point, they turned around and fell, hitting countless enemies who were charging. Sieges were the cruelest battles. There weren't many battle formations here, and the beast men couldn't play this game. They could only rely on swarming the city like ants. The beast men sent out cannon fodder to deplete the northern citadel's strength. Su Luan didn't use too many tricks. He only had the archers, crossbowmen, and militia take turns attacking. There weren't many opportunities to farm experience so easily and safely. For the entire morning, the beast men only used cannon fodder to attack. After a wave of cannon fodder was defeated, they would regroup and send another wave. After this happened a few times, the morale of the cannon fodder was extremely low. They were unwilling to fight even when faced with the orc army's machetes. After seeing this, the beastmen commanding the battle had no choice but to stop. In the afternoon, the official siege finally began. Thousands of orc army began to push heavy siege weapons forward. Compared to the cannon fodder in the morning, this army finally put a lot of pressure on the northern citadel. Woo woo woo. A deep horn sounded, and the Orc Alliance army swarmed forward like a tide. The catapults were loaded with huge rocks, and then slowly pulled open. When the arms of the catapults were pulled to the limit, the catapults suddenly launched. The millstone-sized rocks flew over a distance of more than 300 meters and smashed into the city wall. Bang! With a loud sound, the boulders shattered, and a dent appeared on the city wall. At the same time, more boulders fell on the city wall. Many soldiers were directly crushed by the boulders falling from the sky. Ballistae ready. Creaking sounds that made one's teeth ache sounded. Dozens of ballistae on the city wall were pulled open. 3-meter-long spears were installed on the ballistae like arrows. Light the fire. The soldiers on the side tied the prepared materials to the ballistae and lit them up. Fire. Following the order, the soldiers on the side immediately pulled the trigger. With a muffled sound, 3-meter-long bolts instantly flew out. These bolts were targeted at the catapults in the distance. Although this kind of heavy and crude-looking catapult looked ugly, it was a very strong threat. Dozens of ballistae fired at the same time. Although most of them did not hit the target, there were still a few bolts that hit the catapults hard. The 3-meter-long spears instantly pierced through the catapults, and the flames quickly burned. The beastmen army was not affected too much. They raised their simple shields and rushed to the bottom of the city wall. At this time, the city wall had become a bloody meat grinder. The beastmen and trolls rushed up the city wall crazily. The human spearmen, who had been prepared, immediately went up. As soon as the beastmen showed their heads, the spearmen instantly pierced their vital points and they fell directly from the ladder. The high-level gnolls shuttled through the army. They were agile. Although they did not have the strength of the beastmen, their agile bodies allowed them to dodge more attacks. These agile high-level gnolls were very fast. After a few jumps, they could climb up the city wall and directly pounce on the human defenders. A spearman instantly stabbed out with his spear and crushed the throat of an beastman who had just climbed up the city wall. Before he could retract his spear, a black shadow suddenly rushed over. The next second, a cold light flashed. The spearman covered his throat with both hands and fell down powerlessly. Before the black shadow could get up, a soldier beside him stabbed out with his spear. After countless training, these soldiers had turned stabbing into instinct. A phantom appeared, and the high-level gnoll felt a sharp pain in his heart. The next second, he fell into endless darkness. Fireball. A fireball suddenly flew up from the bottom of the city wall and smashed hard on the city wall. Boom! A muffled explosion sounded, and a gap was instantly blasted open on the city wall. A few nearby soldiers were blown far away. Sullen's eyes were cold. He looked at the beastman shaman a few hundred meters below the city wall. He reached out and grabbed a spear from the side. Lightning flashed, and there were constantly lightning snakes swimming on the spear. Sulen raised the spear and threw it directly at the beastman shaman a few hundred meters away. A bolt of lightning flashed across the sky. The beastman shaman who was about to continue casting looked up as if he sensed something. Then, his chest was instantly pierced by a spear. A large amount of lightning power exploded in an instant, and the beastman shaman was directly electrocuted into a pile of charcoal. As Sulen made his move, the spellcasters on both sides also began to move. A cold aura gathered in the sky. Hathaway's loose wizard robe fluttered. She raised her magic staff and pointed it directly in front of her. Ice storm. Spell maximization plus spell level up. In front of the city wall, a huge ice vortex with a diameter of 50 meters appeared. Countless ice blades appeared and spun rapidly. The moment they appeared, the blue ice blades were dyed red by blood. The entire ice storm turned red in an instant. The enemy soldiers who were within the range of the ice storm were instantly cut into pieces by countless ice blades. When the surrounding Beastman army saw this, they all began to dodge. However, before they could do so, the ice storm suddenly expanded in all directions. Countless ice islands spun and flew outwards. Everywhere it passed, there were corpses everywhere. Chain of fireballs. Karina snapped her fingers, and the surrounding temperature suddenly increased by 12 degrees. In the next second, 5 football-sized fireballs appeared. As she pointed lightly, the fireballs instantly flew towards the dense crowd below the city wall. Boom! 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 A series of explosions sounded. A large number of Beastman army soldiers were blown to pieces by the fireballs. The shockwaves rolled. The Beastmen, gnolls, and trolls that were within 5 meters of the explosion were directly burned into charcoal. Seeing this, the Beastman shamans continued to cast spells to attack. Lightning, ice, fire, all kinds of spells were cast one after another. The number of casualties on both sides increased rapidly. Group haste. Group elemental resistance. Group bears endurance. Raise your spirits. Beams of light rose from Sulen and Hathaway. The light quickly spread and soon covered the entire city wall. After the buffs, the combat power of the northern battlefront city soldiers was greatly increased. Their morale was boosted, and they all became braver and better at fighting. Sulen even saw a barbarian berserker jump up with a giant axe and split a football-sized fireball in half. The collapsed fireball scattered, and the flames engulfed him. However, when it reached him, it was quickly extinguished. A beam of light flashed, and it didn't cause any damage. The northern battlefront city soldiers' strength was greatly increased. The Beastman army that was attacking continuously was instantly stunned. Before this, they could still climb up the city wall. However, after this wave of attacks, they were all chased down. After seeing this, the Beastman commander could only temporarily stop the attack. The tide-like army slowly retreated, leaving behind a ground full of corpses. P.S. Sacrificing a book, The Amazing Life of a Tycoon, a story about how he made billions through the efforts of the system. Chapter 339. The setting sun was like blood. The north wind was howling. A few vulture cries came from the sky. The battle had just ended, and the whole battlefield was filled with the thick smell of blood. A large number of orcs and gnolls were lying on the ground, but there were not many trolls. Unless they were killed by fire or strong acid, the trolls would only be injured at most and would recover in a short time. Team 1, go back and rest. Team 2, keep watch. Seeing that the enemy had completely retreated, Sulen immediately arranged for the army to rotate and send the wounded to the field hospital. Sulen cast a physical healing spell on some of the more seriously injured ones. There were many healing potions stored in the northern battlefront city. These potions were considered inferior potions, so even apprentices could make them. They were also very cheap. The main ingredient was the 7-leaf flower. Its main function was to stop bleeding, relieve pain, and speed up the recovery of wounds. After the battle, Sulen became even busier. Although the orcs had been defeated today, the northern battlefront city had also suffered a lot of casualties. At the same time, a fierce argument was going on in the orc army's camp. Salen, your people must be the main attackers tomorrow. Yes, you trolls must be the main attackers. Salon the orc and Jen the high gnoll said loudly. In today's battle, both sides had suffered heavy losses, but the troll casualties were very low. This time, the alliance, which had been formed by relying on benefits, suddenly had problems. The orcs and gnolls, who had suffered heavy casualties, worked together to pressure the trolls. No, we have an agreement. All 3 sides will send out the same troops. Rant the troll refused without thinking. Yes, we have an agreement, but my people have suffered heavy casualties, and you trolls have suffered few casualties. This is not fair. Yes, you are not afraid of injuries, and you have strong recovery abilities. You should be the main attackers. The orcs and gnolls said unhappily. We trolls have suffered few casualties because of our race's talent. Our attack on the battlefield today was not weaker than yours at all. Rant said loudly, and a deep crack appeared on the ground with a casual punch. After that, the three sides had another fierce argument. In the end, the trolls agreed to be the main attackers tomorrow. After all, the trolls were alone with the orcs and gnolls working together. However, it was not without benefits. The trolls agreed to be the main attackers, but they would also get more loot. After a fierce argument, the three parties finally reached an agreement. The night soon covered the land. Suluan hadn't rested yet. At this time, he was staring at the strategic map. The camp of the allied orcs was 15 miles away from the city. At this time, on the map, a small green team was quietly waiting outside the camp of the allied orcs. This group was the Little Mare's Centaur Cavalry. It was obvious that she was preparing for a night attack. Hathaway, Alex, get ready. We're going out of the city later, Sulen said as he swallowed a piece of barbecued meat and drank a glass of milk. Leave the city? Hathaway was a little surprised. They came all the way here. As the host, we should show them some hospitality. Let's treat them to a fireworks show tonight. Sulen winked at Hathaway and said. Hathaway saw the smile on Sulen's face and instantly understood. A fireworks show is a must. Sulen, do you need me to bring the children? Alex said with a smile. No, this is just an appetizer. The three of us and Mission's cavalry will be enough. Suluan hurriedly stopped him. If he let Alex take the harpies out now, although they would achieve good results, they would only be able to defeat the coalition army at most. Suluan intended to completely devour this army. Even if he couldn't devour them, he would at least severely injure them. Okay then, Alex said with a little regret. After dinner, Sulen rode the Pegasus and left Northern Town City. Hathaway curled up in Sulen's arms while Alex flew beside them. The three of them quickly arrived at the bush where the centaurs were hiding. Mission, how are the preparations? Sulen said to the little mare. It's ready. The soldiers are resting. Mission was obviously happy to see Sulen. It's still early. Let the soldiers rest. Sulen took out a delicate magic clock and looked at it. Sulen planned to attack at 1:00 in the middle of the night. There were still 2 hours before 1 o'clock. At this time, the orcs had already started to rest. Only a few soldiers were standing guard in the lee of the wind. While there was still time, Sulen cast an invisibility spell on himself and observed the orc camp from a close distance. He was looking for the best attack range. At the same time, he needed to mark the enemy's traps one by one and destroy them in advance before the attack. Trolls and orcs were good hunters. In order to prevent a night attack, it was natural for them to set up traps around the camp. Time slowly passed by. Sulen retreated from the orc camp. After some investigation, he found a weakness of the orc army. Although the three races formed an army, they looked united but were actually divided. The three races had their own camps, and their camps were a little far apart. It was obvious that the three races were still on guard against each other. This was a normal phenomenon in the wilderness. In the wilderness, even allies had to be on guard against betrayal. This had nothing to do with morality. This was how they survived. If you underestimated your enemy, you would be stabbed in the back by your allies. The three camps gave Sulen the feeling that they were three hedgehogs for warmth. This arrangement gave Sulen and the centaurs too many opportunities. Soon, it was 1:00 in the middle of the night. The sky was very dark, and the moon was covered by dark clouds. The night was dark and windy. This was the perfect time to kill someone. Tell everyone to get ready. Sulen closed the magic clock and gave the order. The centaurs who had been waiting for a long time all stood up. The bushes were filled with sparse sounds. Sulan took out the sky lamp and waved it. A ray of light quickly spread out. Group invisibility. At the same time, Hathaway also took out her staff. 2 rays of light flashed in succession. Silent. Hide your whereabouts. Even with the support of invisibility, the movement of a team of over 1,000 people could still be easily detected by others. Now that Hathaway had cast 2 spells, the noise was almost inaudible. Seeing this, Sulan once again cast more spells on the army. Group magic weapon. Everyone, get ready. Bear's endurance. Owl's insight. Elemental resistance. Group haste. Rays of light were cast by Sulan, Hathaway, and Alex. The aura of the centaurs reached its peak. After casting the spell, Suluan pointed the spear in his hand. Move out. The army slowly moved out. The centaur army wasn't far from the Beastman army's camp. When they were about 1 kilometer away from the enemy camp, the centaur cavalry loudly set off. The thunderous sound of their hooves couldn't be hidden even with spells. Cavalry needed distance to move, so they could display their maximum speed from here to the Beastman army's camp. Sulan rode his Pegasus and rushed out. The 800 centaurs followed closely behind. The thunderous sound of the horses' hooves quickly awakened the orc army. But before they could put on their armor and pick up their weapons, the centaur army had already rushed in. Chain fireball. 5 football-sized fireballs fell from the sky and instantly blasted a huge hole in the orc army's camp. The centaur cavalry rushed in through the hole. The centaur cavalry were like tanks as they charged forward at high speed, sending the gnolls flying. The impact of more than a ton of force caused the gnolls' chests to cave in. Fresh blood spurted out like a fountain. Bursting flames. Dazzling flames rose in the camp. Hathaway pointed her staff and the camp instantly turned into a sea of fire. Sullen's sneak attack on the high-level gnolls was a decision made after careful analysis. Gnolls had lush fur all over their bodies, especially in winter. In order to resist the cold, gnolls' fur would be even more exuberant. Their fur, which used to keep them warm, was now a fatal poison. Gnolls did not care about hygiene. No, there were not many in the wilderness who cared about hygiene. The orcs were like this, the trolls were like this, and even the centaurs were like this in the past. It was only later that Sulan made a change. The greasy and dirty fur immediately burned when it came into contact with fire. Many gnolls were directly burned into balls of fire. The centaur cavalry did not stop at all. After rushing into the camp, they immediately formed an alliance and continuously set fire. Fire arrows fell from the sky, and everywhere they went, flames rose. Rainstorm. Traces of moisture quickly gathered in the air, and the dark clouds in the sky also sank a little. Soon, drops of rain fell from the sky. The skinny gnoll shaman let out a sigh of relief. The fire in the camp was suppressed by a lot. You reacted so quickly, Sulan said with a little surprise as he reached out to catch the raindrops. But it's still too late. Throw the kerosene. With Sullan's order, the centaur cavalry immediately threw out clay pots. The pots broke, and brown sticky oil flowed out. Fire arrows. Fire. Hundreds of fire arrows flew out in an instant and directly ignited the kerosene. The kerosene, which had been mixed, immediately rose into a 2-meter-tall flame. The raindrops did not have any effect on the flames. The kerosene was a spellcasting material made by the wizard apprentices. Under normal circumstances, it was used together with grease and burning hand. Hathaway adjusted the ingredients to make it easier to burn. Tornado. Alex summoned 4 giant tornadoes. The tornadoes directly rolled up the burning tent, and the flames began to spread quickly. Chapter 340. The sky was dripping with rain, but the flames in the camp did not weaken at all. The appearance of the tornadoes not only spread the flames further, but also directly scattered the dark clouds in the sky. The effect of the rainstorm spell was greatly reduced, and with the destruction of the tornadoes, the effect of the rainstorm spell became smaller and smaller. The Knoll camp was completely ignited, and Sulen also began to retreat with the centaurs. After such a long time, the orcs and trolls began to gather. If they did not leave now, they would be entangled with them. The centaur knights quickly retreated. Some gnolls wanted to chase after them, but they were shot down by the centaur knights, nailing the gnolls to the ground. After rushing out of the camp, they saw the orcs and trolls rushing over. However, with their speed, they could not catch up with the centaurs. As soon as they rushed over, the centaur army had already easily retreated from the battlefield. After leaving the battlefield, the centaur didn't stop. Instead, it turned around and left the area. After the centaur's attack, the beast men would definitely increase their surveillance of the area. If they continued to stay here, it would be very dangerous. The beast men also had cavalry and aerial knights. Sulen and the others separated from Mission halfway. Mission continued to lead the centaurs to the south, while Sulen, Hathaway, and Alex returned to the northern city. The next day, the weather was clear, but the orcs did not attack. The attack last night caused the gnolls to suffer heavy losses. 80% of their tents were burned, and thousands of people were injured or killed. This was already a huge blow to the gnolls, so the orc army did not attack the city today. The morale of the Alliance army had plummeted. After some rest, they launched another attack on the third day. Unlike the previous few times, this time, there were more trolls in the attack. After seeing this situation, Suluan immediately ordered the logistics department to send the water demon venom. The water goblin venom was made from the acid of the legendary water goblin that Sulen had killed in Mirror Lake. Sulen had personally experienced the corrosive nature of the water goblin venom. It was perfect for dealing with trolls. Muffled sounds of war drums came from the back of the orc army. The muffled sound of war drums spread throughout the entire battlefield. As the war drums sounded, a strange power quickly spread. The fighting spirit of the orc army skyrocketed. Their eyes turned blood red, their muscles bulged, and their veins began to twist and swell. One by one, the figures of the shaman priests appeared. The leading shaman seemed to have one foot in the grave, but his aura was unusually strong. He held a white bone scepter in his hand and wore clothes that were decorated with all kinds of gems, beast bones, and feathers. It roared at the sky. Then, the desolate song that had been passed down since ancient times rang out. Its old body stood straight at this moment, and a wild power began to gather on the battlefield. The chief of the orc army rode on a tall land dragon and raised an exaggeratedly huge axe. He looked at the battlefield in front of him and roared, "For the tribe. For the Stormwind clan. For the sake of our future generations." Bang! The huge battle axe sliced through the air and smashed into the ground. The orc chieftain pointed at the towering walls of the northern town city. Countless orcs roared in anger. They held their crude weapons and pounded their chests with their left hands. Their morale was raised to the highest point. Stormwind. 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 Countless orcs madly shouted the name of their clan and looked at the city wall with bloodshot eyes. At the same time, the trolls on the side also gave it their all. The trolls prayed to their ancestors. The totem pole shone with a red light. Wherever it went, the trolls felt a sudden surge of power in their bodies. Cold, hunger, and death. This was a battle that would determine the future of the trolls. Since the destruction of the Troll Empire and the trolls were driven to this barren land, the shadows of hunger and death had always shrouded them. They had lost a lot of their words, history, and even culture. Only a few priests still remembered a few words passed down from ancient times. Now, it was time for the trolls to rise again. As long as they defeated the humans in front of them and occupied this fertile land, the trolls would rise again, and they would become the new king of the Troll Empire. All the warriors had joined the battle. In order to prepare for the consumption of this war, whether it was the trolls, the orcs, or the high-level gnolls, they had all bet on it. If they took over this land, they would be able to return to glory. Once they lost, everything would be over. The war must end with one side completely defeated from the beginning. The Orc Alliance army, which had no way out, burst out with amazing combat power. Sulan stood on the city wall and looked at the army opposite him. He did not expect the Orc Alliance army to want to fight directly. Since you want to fight, then come on. Looking at the Orc Alliance army that was full of fighting spirit, Sulan's heart was filled with pride. The establishment of a kingdom must step on countless corpses. Endless blood will dye my carpet red, and countless bones will build my stairs to the throne. The wails of the enemy are my hymn, and the cries of the soul are my epic. The ancient sacrificial war song sounded. The eyes of countless orcs and trolls turned red, and they went berserk. The orc priests used the power of the beast god to cast war spells, and the trolls awakened their ancestral spirits. Although they didn't have their own gods, their countless sacrifices had created another kind of power. The souls of the heroes who died in battle didn't return to the river Styx. Instead, they stayed in the form of ancestral spirits somewhere in the Grey Waste. They continued to increase their strength until one day they successfully became gods. Although the shaman doctrine was rough and ancient, it was still powerful. Suluan raised his purple dragon halberd high up in the air. Powerful lightning energy revolved around him. His body was lifted up into the air by this powerful energy. A thundercloud vortex appeared in the sky. In the dusky sky, countless lightning bolts crisscrossed. Violent lightning snakes kept rolling around, giving people a feeling of the end of the world. A bolt of lightning as thick as a bucket suddenly fell. Sulan was like the incarnation of the thunder god. The bright lightning lit up the sky, and then a powerful force appeared on the battlefield. Sulan pointed his purple dragon halberd, and the tall Arc de Triomphe in the city shone with a strange light. A powerful force suddenly spread out from the Arc de Triomphe, and it immediately covered the entire city. Song of Triumph. The unique ability of the Arc de Triomphe was activated. A passionate song came from the sky, and a golden light rose from the Arc de Triomphe. Then, a faint golden shadow appeared. These were the soldiers of the North Town city who had died in battle. Now, under the powerful power of the Arc de Triomphe, they were resurrected in the form of battle souls. If the Arc de Triomphe existed, then after thousands of years, it would accumulate a shocking number of battle souls. These battle souls might even evolve into powerful heroic spirits. Unfortunately, the Arc de Triomphe existed for too short a time. It could not unleash its full power. The passionate song rang out, and the morale of the soldiers of the North Town city was instantly boosted. The morale that had dropped because of the actions of the Orc army was instantly boosted. Amidst the chaotic drumming, the Orc army charged forward like a tidal wave. The trolls were right at the front. The soldiers of North Town city had been prepared for this. They immediately poured out the water demon acid. The pungent acid corroded the trolls and turned them into corpses. When the trolls were attacked by the acid, it was like metal falling into concentrated sulfuric acid. Their skin and flesh were instantly torn apart. The trolls screamed in agony. However, this scene did not make the berserk trolls retreat. All the trolls, orcs, and gnolls attacked without fear of death. They would not stop attacking until they fell. Hathaway took out her magic staff and nodded to Alex and Karina behind her. The three of them stood in a triangle and began to prepare their spells. Flaming Storm. Combination Spell. Spell Maximization plus Spell Upgrade. A powerful mana fluctuation instantly appeared on the battlefield. A ball of fire descended from the sky, instantly enveloping a 200-meter radius around Northgard City. Then, the fire began to spin rapidly, and a giant fire tornado appeared on the battlefield. The entire world seemed to have been ignited in an instant. The terrifying heat spread out like waves of air. Along with the violent energy fluctuation, the flaming storm engulfed all the enemies in the surroundings and turned them into charcoal. Moreover, the entire spell was moving rapidly, leaving behind a scorched earth. The beastmen, trolls, and gnolls didn't have the slightest ability to resist such a powerful spell. In the blink of an eye, over 1,000 enemies died in this terrifying storm of flames, and the entire battlefield was instantly cleared out. Flaming Storm was a combination spell that Hathaway had researched. It required the cooperation of 3 great wizards to cast, and its power was far beyond that of an ordinary level 8 spell. It could be said that it was only a step away from a legendary spell. The tide-like orcs' attacks paused for a moment. Although the flaming storm was powerful, it quickly dissipated. The orc army had entered a berserk state. They could not retreat even if they wanted to. Su Luan's body floated in the air, and a thundercloud shrouded the sky above the northern town. Accompanied by the roaring wind and the surging thunder snakes, the sky seemed to be stirred by a powerful force at this moment, forming a terrible vortex. The world was dark. It gave people the illusion that the world was coming to an end. Rumble. Accompanied by the sound of thunder, bolts of lightning descended from the sky. Dozens of bolts of lightning suddenly descended from the sky, and powerful lightning flashed. Large numbers of orcs, trolls, and gnolls were instantly turned into charcoal. Countless lightning snakes continuously jumped about, and for a moment, the entire area turned into a lightning prison. Chapter 341. Countless lightning bolts fell from the sky, and a large number of orcs and trolls were turned into charcoal. The Orc Alliance army suffered heavy casualties. After using a large area of effect skill, the lightning on Sullen's body dimmed a lot. After the Orc Alliance army suffered continuous attacks, they suffered heavy casualties. However, they had no way out and could only bite the bullet. Because there were rivers on both sides of North Town City, the Orc Alliance army could only attack from the other 2 directions. After suffering heavy losses from the front, the Orc Alliance army increased their attacks on the side walls. Fortunately, Su Len was prepared. He had reserved enough troops to immediately block the orcs' attack. There were a large number of enemies fighting on every section of the city wall. A ferocious-looking troll with tattoos on its body raised a shield and pounced forward. It nimbly dodged the acid attacks and blocked a few fire arrows with its shield. The troll jumped down from the crude ladder and opened its bloody mouth. A foul stench wafted out from its mouth. Its blood-red, turbid eyes were filled with madness and bloodlust. Boom! Suddenly, a burly figure rushed up in an instant. The sharp giant axe drew a beautiful arc in an instant. The troll was directly cut in half at the waist. Its blood, flesh, and intestines fell to the ground. However, although it suffered such a serious injury, the troll did not die. As long as they were given enough time, they would recover with their powerful regeneration ability. Sizzle. A burst of green smoke rose. A spearman poured a jar of acid on the troll's body. The troll's body was instantly bubbling, and its original flesh and blood were turning into charcoal at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this moment, a troll was truly killed. On the battlefield, the soldiers in Northern Town City were resisting in an orderly manner, while the barbarian warriors were constantly wandering around. Wherever there was danger, they would rush up immediately. Whether it was the high-level Jackalen, the trolls, or the orcs, they would not be able to last more than a few rounds in the face of these fully armed barbarians. Although Su Len and Hathaway did not make any more moves, North Town City was still as stable as Mount Tai. The tide-like attacks of the Orc allied army seemed to have crashed into a hard rock, and only waves of blood were stirred up. Hathaway was recovering her magic power. Casting spells on the army and releasing Flaming Storm had consumed a lot of her magic power. Fortunately, the elemental pool of the wizard tower had been completed. With the elemental pool to quickly replenish energy, Hathaway would soon recover. This was another advantage of Northern Town City. The orc army outside the city did not have an elemental pool to recover their energy. It was not easy for them to cast a large-scale buff spell. Su Len was also recovering his energy. Although the explosion just now was very powerful, it also consumed a lot of energy. He still had to face the enemy's legendary master, so he couldn't slack off. The battle on the battlefield was getting more and more intense. The Orc allied army had suffered heavy losses, but the Orc chieftain who was commanding the battle didn't waver at all. He stood tall on the battlefield and stared coldly at the towering walls of Northern Town City. For thousands of years, we've longed for fertile land, and now it's right in front of us. High Priest, let's begin. The skinny High Priest slowly stood up. Behind him were dozens of shamans. There were trolls, orcs, and gnolls. Everyone silently came to an altar not far away. This altar looked very simple and crude. Dozens of shamans stood in different places. The High Priest raised the scepter in his hand, and a powerful energy appeared from his body. Then, more and more shamans raised their scepters, and a wave of energy was transmitted to the High Priest in the middle. Soon, all the shamans' energy was gathered at one point. A solid energy appeared around the shamans. Even the clouds in the sky were blown away by this energy. Sulen, who was recovering his energy, suddenly felt a violent elemental fluctuation outside the city. A bad feeling rose in his heart. They're preparing a powerful spell. Hathaway's figure suddenly appeared on the city wall. We need to stop them immediately. It's too late. Alex said with an ugly expression. As soon as Alex finished speaking, the tyrannical energy underwent a huge change. The High Priest standing in the middle of the altar felt his loose clothes suddenly inflate. He felt like he was incomparably powerful at this moment. It was as if the whole world was under his feet. It felt like he could destroy everything with just a little bit of force. Of course, he knew that this was just an illusion caused by the sudden increase in power. The old orc didn't lose himself in it. He knew that he only had one chance, so he immediately cast a spell that he had prepared long ago. Earthquake. Spell combination plus enhanced spell. A terrifying elemental fluctuation suddenly appeared behind the orc army. With a loud rumble, the entire ground began to shake violently. Earthquake? Get out of the way, the city wall is collapsing. Earthquake. It's an earthquake. Waves of screams came one after another. A violent earthquake erupted in an instant. Along with the violent shaking of the earth, the city wall of Northtown City collapsed. Even the houses close to the city wall collapsed. Fortunately, Sulen didn't skimp on the construction of the city wall. Although it was severely deformed, it didn't completely collapse. Many civilians were directly trapped in the collapsed houses. The survivors panicked in this terrifying disaster. They didn't know what to do at all. A large number of gaps appeared on the city wall. The largest one was 20 meters wide. The orc army that was attacking saw the disaster in front of them. Their morale was greatly boosted. Their eyes turned red as they charged through the gaps in the city wall. The soldiers of Northtown City also suffered a lot of casualties at this moment. Fortunately, these soldiers were quite strong. As long as they weren't directly buried, most of the soldiers only suffered minor injuries. When they saw the orc army charging at them like a tide, they immediately went up to meet them. The two sides engaged in the fiercest battle at the gaps. The soldiers of Northtown City used their flesh and blood to block the gaps. Countless orcs, trolls, and high-level gnolls charged madly. Some places that weren't guarded in time were directly charged by the orc army. They were about to kill the civilians. Sulen was furious when he saw the scene in front of him. The newly completed city wall was destroyed. Many civilians were also killed by the monsters that charged in. Damn you all. Teleport. A pillar of light rose. Sullen's figure disappeared on the spot. In the next second, Sullen's figure instantly appeared in the densest area of the battlefield outside the city. Thousands of orc army were around him. They were madly charging toward the gap in the city wall. Endless lightning energy surrounded him. Sullen's figure floated in the air. He raised the purple dragon halberd in his hand and swung it down heavily. Thunderbolt. Domain ability, dazzling lightning appeared on the battlefield, and countless thunderbolts fell from the sky. With Suren as the center, countless thunderbolts instantly fell within a radius of 100 meters. In the blink of an eye, thousands of orcs, gnolls, and trolls were electrocuted and fell to the ground. Countless thunderbolts continued to spread in all directions, directly clearing a large area nearby. However, the orc army that had gone mad did not back down at all. Under the encouragement of the sacrificial drum, these orcs that had fallen into a frenzy did not know what fear was. Sulen frowned and stared at the orc army that was charging at him. He did not cast any more spells. He stood still and took a deep breath. War roar. Divine power. Roar. A deafening sound wave appeared in an instant, and a wave of air quickly spread out in all directions with Suren as the center. The terrifying sound wave swept across everything like a wave of air. Accompanied by violent energy fluctuations, a large number of orcs, gnolls, and trolls were shaken to the point of bleeding from their 7 orifices, and their internal organs ruptured. With Suren as the center, all living creatures within a radius of 300 meters fell down like dominoes. Be it orcs or gnolls, they could not fight back at all. Even the trolls, who were known for their regenerative abilities, needed a long time to recover. In just a moment, thousands of enemies had died to the terrifying sound wave attack. Sulen's position was cleared out in an instant. War roar was one of the few sound wave attacks. Another one that was even more famous was the Banshee's Howl. This spell was the innate ability of the Banshees. Apart from the sound wave attack, it also had an instant death effect. It was very lethal. The 9th circle spell Banshee's Howl was an imitation of this spell. Sulen's continuous attacks instantly interrupted the orc army's attack and successfully bought more time for the soldiers of northern Battlefront City. At the back of the battlefield, the orc chieftain's eyes were almost spitting fire when he saw Sulen's attack. In just a few minutes, the orc army had lost thousands of soldiers. As if he felt the orc chieftain's gaze, Sulen sneered and said slowly, "The final battle has begun. Tower Spirit Number 1. Sulen took out a communication crystal and inserted some energy into it. The communication crystal quickly lit up, and the voice of Tower Spirit Number 1 appeared in his ears. "Master, Tower Spirit Number 1 received. Activate battle mode. Prepare to attack." Sulen gave the order. In the center of the secret realm, the tower spirit that was working suddenly stopped. Then, a powerful energy surged out of the elemental pool. Extracting energy from elemental pool. 25% 50%. Activate battlefield scan. Constructing long-range battlefield mental network. Scanning battlefield. Battlefield mental network construction completed. Lock on spatial coordinates. Golem army charging. Charging complete. Activate teleportation gate. Golem army, teleport. A dazzling light rose. At the same time, a beam of light rose from Sulen's body. In the next second, a huge dimensional gate opened. Then, 16 3-meter-tall steel golems appeared on the battlefield. Chapter 342. The Golem army has arrived. Battle mode activated. Enemy detected. Battle command activated. Loading cleave. Loading powerful attack. Loading sweep. As soon as the 15 steel golems appeared, they immediately transformed into battle mode. These steel golems formed a steel wall as soon as they entered the battlefield. Then, they began to advance toward the orc army. They did not care about the enemies in front of them. The steel golems had strong physical resistance. Even the fierce attacks of the orc warriors in the berserk state could only leave some slight marks on them. These steel golems could cut the enemies in front of them in half with a casual attack. They did not feel pain and were not affected by many negative statuses such as heavy hits, bruises, curses, and so on. The orc army in front of them only had some simple weapons. If they wanted to use these to defeat the steel golems, it would be like using swords to tear apart a Gundam. The orcs' axes, maces, and bone spears slashed at the steel golems, but they were all bounced off and killed by the steel golems in the next second. The orc army suffered a heavy blow. They realized that no matter how they attacked, the steel golems did not seem to be hurt at all. On the other hand, the orcs, gnolls, and trolls were retreating under the steel golems' attacks. With the steel golems joining in, the battlefield was instantly stabilized. Sulan also looked at the rear of the army at this moment. Tower Spirit Number 1. Prepare for decapitation. Sullen's voice was transmitted to Tower Spirit Number 1 through the mind network. Simulating decapitation. Scanning the battlefield. Loading tactical attack plan. In the next second, Sullen's voice rang in Hathaway, Chris, Alex, and Grace's minds. Everyone, listen to my command. Tower Spirit Number 1, construct the teleportation circle. Activate greater energy barrier. Activate tactical support mode. Activate vision sharing. Tower Spirit Number 1's voice kept ringing. The sorcerers of Northern Citadel immediately prepared themselves. Hathaway. Spatial coordinates 153. 224. Prepare, fire burst, spell attack. Prepare to cast. Countdown, 3, 2, 1. A 3D image appeared in front of Hathaway. It was the current battlefield map. A large number of lines appeared on the map, and the coordinates marked by Sulan kept flashing red. Although this was the first time Hathaway was using this method of combat, she still quickly cast the spell the moment she received the order. Then, she directly released the spell at the marked location on the strategic map. Powerful mana revolved around the battlefield, followed by boundless flames. The flames wreaked havoc, and the surrounding orc army instantly fell into chaos. A large number of soldiers were directly burned to ashes. Karina. Space coordinates 242. 327. Prepare, group imprisonment spell. Prepare to cast. 3, 2, 1, release. The shamans who had just come down from the altar were trying to recover their mana. However, before they could recover much of their mana, Karina's spell was already completed. Their bodies suddenly stopped moving. Alex. Space coordinates 242. 327. Prepare the wind blade formation. Prepare to cast. 3, 2, 1, release. The bodies of the shamans and priests were stopped for about a second. Then, countless wind blades instantly exploded among them. The wind blades swept back and forth, and flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The shamans and priests who did not react in time were instantly swept by hundreds of wind blades. Many of them were instantly cut into dozens of pieces, and a large number of them were severely injured in an instant. The surrounding guards were also killed in an instant. Teleportation coordinates locked. Activate teleportation. A spiritual light descended from the sky and instantly enveloped Sulan. In the next second, Sullen's figure appeared next to the orc chieftain. Got you. Thunder territory. As soon as Sullen's figure appeared, endless lightning exploded from his body and wrapped the orc chieftain in it. Boom! The earth trembled. The moment Sulan appeared, the orc chieftain instinctively raised the giant battle axe in his hand and swung it down. The purple dragon halberd swept across, and the loud sound of metal colliding with metal made people's ears go numb. A huge force was transmitted from the purple dragon halberd, and the ground under Sullen's feet was instantly shattered by more than 10 meters. This orc chieftain's class should be a war overlord. It was a special class that evolved from the orc shaman. This class's spellcasting ability was not strong, but its melee ability was terrifying. The attack just now reflected its instinctive attacking ability. Very strong explosive power. Sullen's arm was slightly numb. Then, the purple dragon halberd instantly flicked the battle axe away. In the next second, the purple dragon halberd, surrounded by countless lightning, fiercely pierced towards the orc chieftain. The orc chieftain's reaction was very fast. The battle axe made a circle in the air and flicked the purple dragon halberd away. The war overlord was a violent class. Although Sulan had not seen the fighting style of a war overlord, most of the violent battles were similar. If the war overlord encountered an enemy of similar strength, it would be very easy to end the battle in a short time. But if the War Overlord encountered a powerful enemy, the War Overlord would be suppressed. Sullen's purple dragon halberd danced, creating afterimages that instantly enveloped the orc chieftain. Lightning roamed, spear shadows whistled, and the sound of metal colliding echoed. Lightning snakes flickered on the orc chieftain's body. Under Sullen's attacks, the orc chieftain started to run for his life and could only keep blocking. But even so, wounds kept appearing on his body, and blood splattered everywhere. If nothing unexpected happened, this orc chieftain would soon be beheaded on the spot. Salen, Goen. Come and help me. If I die, you won't be his match either. Saron shouted at this time. Hearing Saron's cry for help, Goen and Salen could no longer watch from the side. They roared and charged forward while brandishing their weapons. Ancestor's soul. Grant me strength. Our God is eternal. Our race is immortal. The two roared, and then a spear instantly pierced towards Sullen's back. The spear was like a bolt of lightning, cutting through the air and instantly arriving behind Sulen. Sulen, with his sixth sense, had already dodged one step ahead. He then leaned his body to the side and dodged it by a hair's breadth. Just as he dodged the spear, a flail smashed down on his head. The strong wind pressure sent the surrounding orcs flying. Sullen's purple dragon halberd swept across and directly pulled back the flail. 3 legends, a war overlord, a gnoll bloody slayer, and an Einherjar. After seeing the 3 of them, Sulen quickly recognized them. After trolls and Einherjars fused, their fighting strength increased greatly. The gnoll bloody slayer was most likely an abyss gnoll that was sent here by the wolf from hell. Although Sulen was 100% sure that he could kill them one-on-one, and even if there was one more, he was confident that he could kill them after paying some price. However, if they attacked together, Sullen's situation was not good. Especially when the gnoll and trolls attacked, the orc chieftain immediately rushed up with his battle axe. Sullen's pupils shrank. He knew very well that the 3 of them wanted to force him to stay. Do you think you can kill me like this? Thunder prison. Sulen instantly summoned countless lightning bolts. The whole sky was filled with thunder and lightning. Endless lightning quickly fell and instantly enveloped the trolls next to him. Countless lightning bolts kept moving, and the troll Salem only felt his whole body go numb. The lightning bolts surrounded him and made his body tremble. Roar! Sulen roared, and a powerful energy instantly erupted from his body. War roar! A sound wave burst out in an instant, and a powerful airwave rolled out. The 3 people who were fighting Suluan felt their minds go blank at this moment, and their ears went deaf for a short time. Sulen naturally would not miss this opportunity. The lightning on the purple dragon halberd skyrocketed, and his figure instantly broke through the sky and pounced on the enemy in front of him like a bolt of lightning. The purple dragon halberd was like a meteor streaking across the sky. At this moment, it suddenly accelerated and stabbed directly at Saron. Pfft! Just as it was about to pierce Saron's head, Saron finally got rid of the dizziness and quickly dodged. However, he was still too late. The purple dragon halberd left a fist-sized wound on his waist. Sulen did not stop. He raised the purple dragon halberd and stabbed at Saron again, making it clear that he would not stop until he killed him. Seeing this, Saron's fierceness erupted in an instant. He no longer dodged, and the axe in his hand chopped down at Sullen's head, making it clear that he wanted to die together with him. Kill in the way. At this moment, Sulen seemed to have entered a berserk state. When he saw the axe falling, he did not dodge at all. The purple dragon halberd accelerated and stabbed at Saron's heart. Then, the moment the axe fell, Sullen's palms suddenly slapped horizontally, and in an instant, the orc's axe deviated by 5 centimeters. Then, the sharp and cold blade of the axe smashed down on Sullen's face. At this moment, the purple dragon halberd carried endless lightning and pierced Saron's heart. However, at this moment, a flail also fell on Sullen's back. The huge force caused severe pain in Sullen's back, and his body involuntarily rolled forward. Lightning surged, and countless bolts of lightning erupted from Sullen's body, paralyzing the gnoll that was about to chase after him. Sullen's figure rolled, and he completely dodged the gnoll's attack. Feeling the sharp pain in his back, Sulen frowned slightly. In the next second, a beam of light filled with life energy rose from his body. It was living healing. With the influx of life energy and his own powerful regenerative ability, the wound just now healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a breath, the original wound had disappeared. Seeing Sullen's powerful regenerative ability, the gnoll's pupils shrank, and a bad feeling rose in his heart. Chapter 343. Su Luan had several legendary talents, and most of them stacked HP and defense. An ordinary legendary warrior with legendary tenacity, legendary sturdiness, legendary strength, as well as various fighter dexterity and combat specialties were already considered good. Su Len also had regeneration, body hardening, iron bones, sixth sense, legendary battle reflex, and many other talents. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to fight 3 legendary warriors and a possessed heroic spirit. The purple dragon halberd shook slightly, and the blood on it slid down. Sullen's figure turned into a shadow and rushed up again. The moment his feet touched the ground, the whole ground cracked into a spider web. Facing these enemies, Su Len directly burst out with all his combat power. The purple dragon halberd in his hand flashed with dazzling lightning, and he stabbed at Saron again. Legendary warriors had legendary tenacity, especially for races like orcs, which had stronger physiques. Even if their hearts were pierced, they could still fight for a period of time. If they had the very rare talent of death tenacity, their strong muscles would automatically close the wound, and it wouldn't affect the body's combat power. Of course, the effect of death tenacity had a time limit. If the time limit was over and there was no treatment, they would really die. However, if they could find a high-grade priest to cast a divine spell to repair the body before the time limit was over, they would immediately be able to jump around again. Moreover, death tenacity had another advantage, which was immunity to instant damage. In other words, spells like Finger of Death and Death Gaze were useless against him. Even Su Len didn't have this rare talent, but this time, he saw it on Saron. Su Len was very sure that his halberd had pierced Saron's heart, but Saron didn't die. Instead, it pounced on him with bloodshot eyes and continued to fight. Clang! 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 Sparks flew everywhere, and the sound of metal clashing was deafening. Su Len held the purple dragon halberd and faced Saron, the gnoll Goen, and the troll Siren, who was already possessed by a heroic spirit. Under the state of full firepower, the few of them fought together, and Su Len didn't fall into a disadvantage at all. The main reason was that he had almost no shortcomings. Sullen's strength was an all-round development. It was not obvious at the beginning, but when he advanced to the legendary level, he would realize that any of his shortcomings could become his Achilles' heel. Sullen's strength was 50 points, his constitution was 44 points, and his dexterity was 37 points. Even his dexterity, which was the lowest among the gnolls, was slightly higher than the gnolls, who had the highest dexterity. Coupled with his legendary battle reflex, dodge intuition, roll dodge, jump dodge, lightning reflex, sixth sense, and agile movement, Su Len was like a legendary god of war at this moment. His storm-like attacks suppressed the 3 of them. After a long period of hard training and accumulation, Su Len was proud of himself. When facing the attacks of several legendary enemies at the same time, he still had the power to fight. Sullen's figure dodged quickly. After having many dodge talents, Sullen's chances of dodging attacks were very high, especially after awakening his sixth sense. He began to dodge many attacks the moment they were launched. For those that he couldn't dodge, he would also reduce the damage to the minimum. However, injuries of this level were basically useless to Su Len. Ever since he had the advanced regeneration talent, Sullen's recovery speed was very fast. In addition, he used physical healing from time to time, so he didn't receive any substantial damage at all. Silver Dragon Inversed Scale Spear. Countless lightning bolts converged on Su Luan's body, and the phantom of a massive silver dragon appeared behind him. The dragon roared towards the sky, and in the next second, it flew towards the three players. Gon, the most agile gnoll among them, dodged Su Luan's attack by a hair's breadth. However, the other two players beside him were not so lucky. Especially the orc Saron. Even with tenacity of the dead, such a long fight had almost exhausted its time. Sullen's main target was not the troll Salen. He had merged with the heroic spirit, and with his own strength, he was already the strongest of the three. In addition to his powerful recovery ability, it was easy to defeat him, but not easy to kill him. Trolls had the ability to regenerate. As long as the injuries weren't caused by strong acid or burns, they wouldn't care about other injuries at all. However, the orc Saron was different. A large amount of lightning instantly wrapped around Saron. The powerful lightning power numbed his body, and the wounds that were forcibly closed by his muscles finally couldn't take it anymore and slowly burst open. Slash. Sullen's figure disappeared in an instant, and in the next moment, he appeared beside Saron. Then, a storm of attacks rained down on him. Crack. With a dazzling flash of lightning, the purple dragon halberd shone brightly in an instant. The sharp halberd cut through the air, and in an instant, it slashed across Saron's neck. Blood splattered everywhere, and his ugly head flew high into the air. Saron's huge body collapsed with a loud bang. After completely killing Saron, the whole battle began to shift in Sullen's direction. Originally, the three of them together could only be in a stalemate with Su Len. Now that one of them was missing, the balance was instantly broken. After killing Saron, Su Len turned his next target to the gnoll Gon. "Didn't you have fun sneaking up on me with the flail just now? Now it's your turn." Su Len roared, and his speed increased again. Seeing Su Len pounce on Gon, the troll Salen rushed up without hesitation, wanting to stop Su Len. It wasn't that he had a good relationship with Gon. If it were in other circumstances, Salen would have wanted Gon to be killed by Su Len so that he could take over the gnoll's territory. However, in this situation, once Gon was killed, he would be the next to die. After seeing Saron killed, Gon was already terrified. Although Gon was the most bloodthirsty among the three of them, he was actually the most cunning and cautious gnoll. To put it nicely, he was cautious, but to put it bluntly, he was afraid of death. Therefore, when he saw Su Len pounce on him, Gon did something unexpected. He took advantage of the time when Salen was entangled with Su Len, and directly abandoned Salen, turned around, and ran. With more than 30 dexterity, he was very fast. In just a few flashes, he had run dozens of meters away. Seeing the gnoll's fleeing figure, Salen's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He wanted to rush over and kill the gnoll, but under Sullen's attack, he could only watch as the gnoll fled. Su Len didn't expect the gnoll to run away so quickly, but he reacted in an instant. One had already escaped, and he couldn't let the one in front of him escape. Back in time, when Su Len was fighting with the orc chief, the gnolls, and the trolls, the northern battlefront city relied on the help of Hathaway and the others, as well as the 15 steel golems to repel the orc coalition army. While Su Len was fighting with a few legendary enemies, he had already issued a battle plan through the telepathic communication established by Tower Spirit No. 1. The Centaur cavalry and the Harpies, who had been hiding near the northern battlefront city, also began to move. Of the 800 Centaur cavalry, 200 of them were heavy cavalry equipped with iron armor, while the others were inlaid with iron scale armor. After receiving Sullen's order, the Centaur cavalry began to charge from the flanks of the battlefield. At this time, the Orc coalition army was attacking the city with all their strength, and all their reserves had been sent to the battlefield. Because of Sullen's entanglement, the Orc chief couldn't command, and problems began to appear on the battlefield. The deafening sound of hooves suddenly rang out. By the time the Orc army realized what was happening, they were already less than 500 meters away. Such a short distance would only take a few breaths of time for the cavalry. Under the lead of 200 heavy cavalry, the Centaur cavalry took advantage of the chaos that appeared in the Orc army and tore open a hole like a sharp scalpel. On the plains, the only way for infantrymen to fight against cavalry was to form a formation. Even for a race with strong physique like the beast men, it was the same. A sturdy centaur weighed more than a ton and was equipped with 300 pounds of metal armor. When it ran, it was like a charging tank. The 200 heavy cavalry's charge was like a hot knife cutting through butter. They directly broke through the Orc coalition army's formation from the flank. They didn't care about anything else as they charged forward. All the enemies in front of the centaur cavalry were either killed or sent flying. Some orcs and trolls that couldn't dodge in time were directly trampled into meat paste. If it wasn't for the shaman's spell to boost the Orc coalition army's morale and making them go berserk, the centaur cavalry's charge would have scattered them. Just as the centaur cavalry completely pierced through the Orc coalition army, a dark cloud suddenly floated in the sky. Then, there was the sound of wings flapping. Countless harpies flew above the battlefield, and in the next second, an overwhelming number of rocks fell from the sky. The harpies each carried a bag the size of a school bag, which was filled with fist-sized rocks. There were about 10 rocks in each bag, and each harpy carried 2 bags. In total, the harpies carried more than 60,000 rocks. The fist-sized rocks fell like rain. The orcs, gnolls, and trolls that lacked protective equipment couldn't resist at all. They were directly smashed to pieces, and their bones were broken. The Orc coalition army's attack was completely interrupted. The falling rocks kept falling, and the Orc coalition army was exhausted. Seeing this opportunity, the northern city army also began to push back. The 15 steel golems pushed forward together, and all the enemies in front of them were completely eliminated. Chapter 344. Sulen had given the harpies several different throwing weapons. The most common one was rocks, which were cheap and effective. The second one was the incendiary bomb, which Sulen had used when encircling the orcs. It was very effective, but the only downside was that it was expensive. The oil and sugar needed for the incendiary bomb were not cheap, so it could only be used in special situations. There were also some gas bombs and tear gas bombs that Sulen had Hathaway make, but they had not been tested yet. With the harpies joining the battle, the situation began to change. Northgard City also began to counterattack. The Orc army was defeated by Northgard City's air and ground. At this time, the 500 crossbowmen had finished gathering. After forming the crossbow formation, the crossbowmen fired wave after wave of arrows. A large number of orcs, gnolls, and trolls were turned into porcupines. At this time, the gnolls who had been resisting suddenly collapsed. They wanted to escape, but Northgard City had surrounded them from the sky to the ground. They had no chance at all. After Gnoll Goen escaped, the remaining troll Salen could only bitterly resist. Although he had the buff of a heroic spirit, he was still no match for Sulen. If it were not for the troll's special constitution, he would have followed in Saron's footsteps. Even so, his situation was getting worse. Every attack of Sulen's carried powerful lightning power. Not only did it have a high chance of causing paralysis, but the injured parts would also be turned into charcoal. This situation also reduced the troll's regenerative ability, but it was not as effective as the acid. Although the legendary troll was no match for Sulen, it would not be easy for Sulen to kill him. But it was not easy. Greater haste. Sulen did not hesitate to use greater haste with the help of the wind dragon flag. His speed was already very fast, but now it was even faster. He waved the purple dragon halberd with endless power. Bolts of lightning wrapped around Salen, and the sky was filled with countless lightning bolts that instantly covered the area. Thunder Prison. The boundless power of lightning transformed into a cage that instantly engulfed Salem. The powerful power of lightning burst out in an instant, and the entire world seemed to be illuminated in that instant. Saren's body stiffened, and at that time, Hathaway's silhouette suddenly appeared behind him. Melf's acid arrow *5, multiple casting plus instant cast, Salen, who was already heavily injured by Sulen, was instantly surrounded by 5 acid arrows. Trolls had low resistance to acid, and this wave of attacks completely killed him. Although Melf's acid arrow was very similar to acid arrow, since it had a name, this spell naturally had its own uniqueness. The Melf series of spells also had a name called Lesser God Slaying Spells. This kind of spell was different from ordinary spells. It had a different way of judging. It was one of the few spells that could break through a god's protective force field. The heroic spirit's defensive force field was not as strong as that of the gods, so Salen was completely defeated in this state. Hathaway was still worried when she saw the troll's state. She cast a few fire spells in succession, completely burning it to ashes. Salen died, and the heroic spirit attached to him automatically left. However, before the heroic spirit could escape, Sulan had already entangled it with countless lightning bolts. At the same time, the purple dragon halberd, which was already prepared, pierced the heroic spirit with powerful lightning power. Crack! The sound of crystals shattering was heard, and the pale golden heroic spirit instantly shattered into countless golden fragments like a crystal. It then turned into countless spiritual lights and finally disappeared completely. Ding dong! A light sound was heard, and a pale golden soul crystal appeared and fell to the ground. This was the last thing the heroic spirit left behind. Ding! Congratulations to the host. You have successfully killed a heroic spirit. You have received 31,000 EXP. Ding! Target is a divine creature. It has divinity points. Extracting target's divinity power. Extraction successful. You have received 2 divinity points. A heroic spirit, 2 divinity points, more than 30,000 EXP, and a legendary soul crystal. This was a great harvest. The other things were not so bad, but the divinity points were really rare. With the divinity points he had now, if others knew about it, there would definitely be many powerhouses eyeing it. He was now considering whether to find trouble with the other troll tribes to see if he could get more divinity. After Sulan killed Salen, the situation on the battlefield had completely reversed. The huge orc allied army had completely collapsed after losing their leaders. The centaurs' continuous attacks and the harpies' falling rocks completely defeated the entire orc army. The Northgard city's initiative to attack was the last straw that broke the camel's back. The battlefield was filled with orcs, gnolls, and trolls fleeing pathetically. Seeing this situation, Sulan secretly heaved a sigh of relief. In the end, he still won this war. The Northgard city's soldiers only returned after chasing the defeated army until late at night. After winning, Sulan heard the system prompt in his ears. Congratulations, host. You have led the Northgard city to a brilliant victory. Your fame has spread widely in the North and human countries. Your prestige has increased by 30. Northgard City Defense Battle, November 1687 of the Huiwa calendar. The Northern Orcs joined forces with the high-level gnolls and the Bloodblade Trolls to launch a life-and-death battle against the Northgard City. This was a life-and-death battle. More than 40,000 enemy troops participated in the battle. Under your command, the Northgard City blocked the enemy's attack and completely defeated the Orc allied army in the subsequent counterattack. You have won this battle. You have become the overlord of the Northern Wasteland. Your relationship with the Orcs has been reduced to mortal enemy. Your relationship with the gnolls has been reduced to mortal enemy. Your relationship with the trolls has been reduced to mortal enemy. The Orc god is hostile to you, and the Gnoll god Yinagu is hostile to you. Congratulations, host. You have successfully defeated the Orc chief Saron. You have received 35,600 EXP, a platinum treasure chest, and a legendary skill point. Congratulations, host. You have participated in killing giant demon Saren. You have received 18,600 EXP, 1 platinum treasure chest, and 1 enhancement stone. Congratulations, host. Under your command, the Northern Battlefront City's army has achieved victory. You have obtained 45,000 experience points and a platinum treasure chest. Congratulations, host. Your EXP is full. You have leveled up. You are currently level 25. You have received 2 free attribute points and 2 skill points. As the battle ended, the system prompt kept ringing in Sullen's ears. What surprised Su Len was that the EXP he received from killing the troll Salon was less than half of the other legendary experts. He opened the system to check and found that most of the EXP had been taken by Hathaway. After all, it was Hathaway who killed the troll, and he could only be considered as a support. It was already good enough that he got these things. There were many benefits after this battle. He had received 3 platinum treasure chests, 2 legendary skill points, a large amount of EXP, and of course, the enmity of the 2 gods. However, Su Len did not take it to heart. No matter if it was the orc god or the gnoll god, they could only watch, no matter how unhappy they were, unless they were willing to send their avatars to build a roof. However, their enemies would not let go of such a good opportunity. As long as they sent their avatars, their enemies would soon come knocking on their door. Su Len did not open the treasure chest immediately. Instead, he prepared to use the legendary skill points. He had received 1 point from killing the orc chief, and together with the one from last time, Su Len now had 2 legendary skill points. After opening the system interface, a bright plus flashed behind the forbidden magic skill. Su Len took a deep breath, then chose to use the 2 legendary skill points on the forbidden magic skill with a solemn expression. Ding! Do you want to use 2 legendary skill points to enhance the forbidden magic skill? Yes. A strange force instantly appeared on Sullen's body and then disappeared. Su Len looked at his body in a daze, but he did not find anything. The forbidden magic skill in his system interface had also changed. Forbidden magic field. After use, it can forbid magic in an area or a single target. After using the forbidden magic skill, the caster, including the legendary, will be cut off from the surrounding elemental energy. The caster can only rely on their own magic power to cast spells. Note, it can only be effective on people who are not stronger than the caster. The duration varies according to the opponent's resistance. Looking at the introduction of the new skill, Sullen's eyes lit up. The upgraded forbidden magic field could finally be effective on legendary masters. With this skill, the enemy's strength would be directly reduced by half. After upgrading the skill, Su Len opened the system space and prepared to open the treasure chest. 3 rays of light rose one after another, and the system prompt sounded in Sullen's ears. Congratulations, host, you have opened the platinum treasure chest. You have obtained the item Lucky Gem *1. Congratulations, host, you have opened the platinum treasure chest. You have obtained the talent, Tenacity of Death, partial information. Congratulations, host, you have opened the platinum treasure chest. You have obtained the item Leaves of Wisdom *1. After the rays of light dispersed, Su Len began to check the rewards. This time, he had gained a lot. What surprised Su Len was the partial information of the talent, Tenacity of Death. After obtaining it, Su Len discovered that to obtain this talent, he still needed to invest 2 skill points. Su Len directly used the skill that he had just obtained and successfully obtained this talent. Tenacity of Death, special talent. After experiencing a life and death crisis and escaping the shadow of death, you have obtained the power to resist death. You are immune to instant death damage. Even if your vital points are hit, your death will be delayed. The delay time is Constitution *0. 5 minutes. Chapter 345. The effect of the Tenacity of Death was very powerful, but it was not useful under normal circumstances. However, the effect of being immune to instant death and delaying death was still very good. With Sullen's physical healing, it would not be easy for him to die even if he wanted to. If his advanced regeneration talent was upgraded to legendary regeneration, Su Len would become a meat shield. It was a pity that the Abyss Gnoll had escaped, but it did not matter. As long as it was still in the northern wilderness, he would meet it one day. Su Len looked at the various things left. The lucky gem was a beautiful gem that shone with a white light. It was smaller than a fist and had simple attributes. Lucky gem, a magical rare gem. Legend has it that it can bring good luck to people. Effect: using it when refining potions, making equipment, or forging weapons can increase the success rate by 25%. Of course, you can also choose to use it when the skill needs to be judged successful. Note: you are favored by the goddess of luck. This is just right for upgrading the purple dragon halberd. I just got a reinforcement stone. Let's upgrade the purple dragon halberd together. Thinking of this, Sulen immediately took out the reinforcement stone that he just got. The reinforcement stone was a red round gem. The gem was pure and contained a strange power. Reinforcement stone, a rare magic gem. After use, it can upgrade a weapon or other magic equipment by 1 level. It is effective below legendary, including legendary. The success rate of upgrading a level 1 magic item is 80%. The success rate of upgrading a level 2 magic item is 70%. The success rate of upgrading a level 3 magic item is 60%. The success rate of upgrading a level 4 magic item is 50%. The success rate of upgrading a level 4 magic item is 40%. Note: items that fail to be upgraded will not be destroyed. The success rate of upgrading the 2 gems together was 65%. With the bonus from the blacksmith workshop in the northern town, it was enough for Sulen to gamble. Sulen carefully put away the 2 gems. He was going to find a blacksmith master to upgrade the purple dragon halberd after he was done with the things in front of him. Sulen had already obtained a leaf of wisdom, which could increase his spiritual power. He also had a legendary soul crystal, which could not be used for the time being, but he could store it for now. The Beastmen army had suffered a crushing defeat. Defeated soldiers were everywhere outside the North Town city. Even if half of the 40,000 Beastmen army had died in the battle, there were still 20,000 of them left. Of course, only around 10,000 of them had died in the battle. The rest of the defeated soldiers had scattered and tried to break out of the encirclement. There were only 15,000 soldiers in the North Town city, including the Harpies. It was not easy to capture so many of them. Even with the help of the Harpies and Centaurs, there were still many who managed to escape. On the second day after the battle, the number of captives was finally calculated. They had captured 8,000 orcs, trolls, and gnolls. There were still 10,000 orcs scattered around Northgard City. The territory around the North Town city was a mess because of these people. After keeping the captives, Sulen did not have time to let the army rest. He immediately ordered the army to split into small groups and clear out the territories around the North Town city. After dealing with the defeated soldiers, Sulen looked at the 8,000 monsters in front of him and felt a headache coming on. If they were races like kobolds and goblins, Sulen would have taken them all as slaves. However, these monsters were all powerful races. Sulen could not keep them all as slaves unless he prepared a few thousand soldiers to guard them. Sulen did not want to kill them all. There were 8,000 of them. In the end, he decided to sell these slaves to other slave traders. Orcs, gnolls, and trolls were very popular in the gladiator arena. The most prosperous cities for gladiators were in the southern countries. These countries were rich because of the ocean trade. Because of their wealth, the nobles and merchants loved to watch gladiator fights. The more exciting and bloody the fights were, the more they liked it. In the southern countries, the fights between gladiators and lions and tigers were just appetizers. Only trolls, ogres, and high-level gnolls could satisfy them. It was said that tens of thousands of gladiators died in the gladiator arena every year in the southern countries. One could imagine how popular the business was. Sometimes, when there were some famous gladiator arena fights, there would even be bets of hundreds of thousands of kinnar. Naturally, there were caravans from the southern countries in the northern city. When they heard that the northern city was going to sell a large number of orcs, gnolls, and trolls as slaves, they quickly ran to the northern city and asked to see Sulen. Merchants from other countries also flocked to the city after hearing the news. For this reason, Sulen had no choice but to hold a slave auction. The slaves were divided into groups of 20 for the auction. Of course, in order to get more profits, Sulen did not rush to hold the auction. Instead, he let the news spread for a while and let more people compete. After arranging the auction, Sulen began to clean up the mess. Because the orc shamans used earthquake, 2 of the newly built city walls in the northern city were destroyed. Even many houses near the city walls were affected. Many of them collapsed and needed to be repaired. In addition to clearing out the raiders, the northern city was very short on manpower during this period. After being busy for a while, he finally found time to upgrade the purple dragon halberd. The best blacksmith in the northern city was a grey dwarf named Brandon Bronzebeard Ironhammer. He was a 200-year-old orc. He was 1.5 meters tall. He had brown hair and a thick beard of the same color. His 2 arms were extremely muscular and did not look proportionate at all. Brandon, I need you to upgrade my weapon. Sulen took out the purple dragon halberd and handed it over. It's this purple dragon halberd. It said that this weapon has been stained with the blood of at least 5 legend rank experts. I bet it will definitely become a legend. It's my honor to be able to upgrade this weapon. Brandon said excitedly as he grabbed the purple dragon halberd. But, why don't you make a normal hammer or axe? Lord, don't you think a hammer or axe would be better? After seeing your heroism on the battlefield, I even came up with a name for the weapon. Mjolnir or Thunder Axe. If you don't think these names are good, I even came up with a name called Storm Axe. What do you think? After receiving the purple dragon halberd, Brandon did not check it out immediately. Instead, he tried his best to promote the hammer and axe to Sulen. Hammer? Sulen imagined him fighting with a hammer. No matter how he looked at it, he looked like a maintenance worker. Sulen immediately shook his head and completely drove the image out of his mind. I don't want a hammer. I want the original purple dragon halberd. Sulen emphasized. Lord, I think you should consider a battle axe or a hammer. If you think that there is a problem with the quality, you can rest assured. We dwarves will make the best of. Sulen waved his hand and interrupted him directly. He stared at him and said, I don't want a hammer or a battle axe. I want a halberd. Brandon felt a chill run down his spine when he saw Sulen's gaze. He could not help but nod. As you wish. After a few expansions, the blacksmith shop in northern town had become very large. As a master blacksmith, Brandon had his own personal forging room. Sulen followed Brandon into the room and took out the materials to upgrade the purple dragon halberd. Other than the strengthening gems and lucky gems, there was also a silvery white metal that was slightly smaller than a fist. It was mithril. Other than that, there were some stardust, water demon blood, and arcane steel. Brandon was very surprised when he saw the 2 gems that Sulen took out. These gems are so special. The power on them is so special. Brandon said in surprise as he picked up the strengthening gem. I feel that it can directly strengthen weapons and equipment. Yes, this is a strengthening gem. The other one is a lucky gem. They are both used to strengthen weapons. This time, I wanted to reach the legendary level. Sulen said as he picked up the other gem. Legendary. Brandon's eyes widened. As a blacksmith, he knew very well how precious a legendary weapon was. One had to know that in the history of the Grey Dwarves, there were not many legendary weapons that had been successfully forged. However, every legendary weapon was famous. Now that Sulen said that he wanted to strengthen this weapon to the legendary level, Brandon instantly felt a lot of pressure. Don't feel pressured. Sulen said when he saw Brandon's serious expression. With the strengthening gem and the lucky gem, there's at least a 60 to 70% chance of success. With such a high probability in your craftsmanship, do you still think that it'll be difficult to succeed? Or do you think that your craftsmanship is not good enough? Don't tell me you can't do it. Sulen said as he glanced at him. Are you kidding me? My craftsmanship is not good enough? Why don't you ask around? I'm the best blacksmith among the Grey Dwarves. Isn't it just legendary? Look, this time I'll definitely forge you a legendary weapon of the finest quality. When he heard Sulen questioning his blacksmith skills, Brandon instantly became like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He was instantly bristling. The hair and beard on his head stood straight up, giving the impression that he had suddenly grown 10 centimeters taller. That's good. I'll be waiting. Sulan snickered in his heart. He was very satisfied with Brandon's high-spirited state. After getting into working mode, Brandon was no longer as chatty as before. He directly raised the fire in the furnace. The red flames soared, and Brandon continued to add dye into the furnace. Soon, waves of heat rolled over, and the temperature in the forging room instantly rose by a few degrees. The temperature of the furnace was so high that the surrounding air was distorted. The temperature of the furnace rose rapidly, and the flames gradually turned from red to orange. Finally, all the flames turned orange. At this time, Brandon put on a special insulating suit, picked up the purple dragon halberd and placed it in the furnace to calcine it. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.